Chapter 2442. The Blue Team's command center was in disarray. They had lost contact with all the battalions and companies. In war, this was the most fatal incident. The Red Team's fake base station gave a fake order. This order was given through decoding. Not long after, a few of the Blue Team's battalions carried out the fake order given by the Red Team. Yi Qian's order was not too ridiculous. If it was, it would be underestimating the enemy. The Blue Team's battalion commanders would definitely find something fishy. After the fake order was given, the Blue Team did indeed find something unusual. Something is wrong. Our marching route is the best route. The command center's latest order is for us to adjust our route. This is not normal. A Blue Team company commander opened up an electronic battle map and analyzed it calmly. After a short analysis, the company commander realized something was wrong and immediately contacted the command center. However, the Blue Team's main server was still being rebuilt. Even if they contacted the Red Team, they would be directly connected to the Red Team's fake base station. Seeing this, Yi Qian had a technician send over the decoding code. The Red Team's main force is heading south. We will intercept them. The Blue Team's battalions and companies that received the decoding code looked at the battlefield. The Red Team's main force is heading south. We will intercept them. If that was the case, then it was possible. There was nothing unusual about it. The Blue Team's main force, no longer suspicious, began to follow Yi Qian's fake order and head south to intercept the Red Team. At the same time, the Blue Team's reconnaissance team, led by He Kun, launched a full sneak attack on the Red Team's tent. Take down all the sentries outside. Move quickly. They're all freshmen. Their reactions aren't as fast as ours. Quickly charge inside. With a few people attacking together, I'm not afraid that we can't capture Yi Qian. He Kun, who was lying in the grass, made the final detailed arrangements. After the deployment, they began to move. They followed the Blue Team's commander's suggestion. They did not charge out directly, but used a sneak attack method. Throw the smoke grenades. Following He Kun's signal, 3 smoke grenades were thrown from different angles near the Red Team's tent. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The detonation of the fuse caused the explosive in the barrel to explode. The white phosphorus that could release smoke scattered in all directions with a bang. The white phosphorus rapidly burned upon contact with the air, and in less than a second, the Red Team tent was engulfed in thick smoke. Only the tent was not invaded by the smoke. It was at this time that He Kun launched a sneak attack on Red Team's tent. He even heard the sentries outside the Red Team's tent shout, "Not good. The Blue Team has launched a sneak attack. Ha ha ha. Too late." He had already brought his comrades to the door. The sentries outside the Red Team's tent were indeed very easy to deal with. The scouting team that He Kun had brought were all students with decent skills. A few of them rushed up and took down one in a few seconds. It didn't take long for all the freshmen outside to be taken care of. Inside, several students guarding the main servers followed Yi Qian's orders and cut off the power to all the main servers. They were to prepare for battle as soon as possible. Yi Qian was guarding the entrance of the military tent. When the first figure rushed in, she lifted her leg and lightly tripped and hooked it. The third-year student who rushed in did not stabilize himself and fell over. Hold it tight. Draw your cards. A few freshmen who were on guard immediately rushed down and held down the third-year student who was at the front. The other party was still stubbornly resisting, so one of the students simply pressed on top of him, using his weight to completely control the other party. His armband was torn off by the freshman, and at the same time, his neck was tightened. This was definitely a death. Chapter 2443. While several freshmen were killed, and a third-year student was killed, Yi Qian's side took down another person with an imposing manner. She directly threw the other person out of the door like a sandbag. With a bang, he crashed into 2 people who were about to charge forward. Yi Qian shouted at the freshman technical students, "Retreat!" Then he took advantage of the thick smoke to rush out of the tent. The Red Team's tent was no longer there after the main server was rebuilt. If it weren't for the mission of capturing the enemy's commander alive during the exercise, Yi Qian wouldn't have returned to the tent to avoid being discovered by the Blue Team's reconnaissance team. Now that he was back, he definitely wouldn't give the blue team's reconnaissance team a chance to leave alive. Out of the 15 people from the blue team, 3 of them were killed in the blink of an eye. This was fast. When the freshman technical students heard Yi Qian's order, they immediately rushed out. They knew that their chances of surviving were slim, but Yi Qian was still here. She had only brought 2 sentries back with her. For the sake of their commander's safety, they had to give it their all. Even though the freshmen had only been in military training for less than a year, they still had a lot of bravery. Faced with the blue team's sneak attack, they fought tenaciously under the leadership of Yi Qian. In the end, 2 of the third-year students were killed. The smoke from the smoke grenades gave the blue team an advantage in concealment. At the same time, it also gave Yi Qian an advantage in concealment. The smoke grenades used for the exercise were only made from white phosphorus. There were no other chemicals added to them, not even a choking smell. They were only used for concealment. Yi Qian shuttled through the white smoke. A special forces soldier was very decisive and took care of 2 blue team students in an extremely swift and fierce manner. He Kun, who was hiding outside, stared at the white smoke without blinking. When he heard 2 muffled sounds coming from inside the white smoke, his face turned cold. Don't charge forward. Yi Qian is really not easy to deal with. He stopped his comrades who were preparing to charge forward. Wait for the smoke to disperse. Maybe continue to hide. It was impossible to save the comrades who were charging forward now. They had already been taken care of by Yi Qian. If the rest of them charged into the smoke, they would just be sending themselves to their deaths. Yi Qian led the 3 students out of the fog and hid in the bushes. Without the cover of the thick fog, Yi Qian got close to them and whispered, "We still don't know how many troops the blue team has sent out. Let's not move for the time being. We have to wait for the blue team to make a move first." "I have a suggestion," a technical student from the red team suggested. Yi Qian's eyes lit up when he heard this. He nodded and said, "Yes, but in the end, the 3 of you died together." They planned to rush back to the tent before the smoke dissipated because the blue team had yet to complete their mission of destroying the red team's base station. If the blue team retreated, then the 3 of them would be fine. If the blue team didn't give up and continued to rush into the red team's tent, then the 3 of them would work together to kill as many as they could. In this way, Yi Qian was also relieved of some of the pressure. A few of the dead red and blue team students waved their hands to disperse the thick smoke in front of them as they rushed out. The blue team students sized up the freshmen. With a glance, they knew that their target was still alive and had not been captured alive. The person who ambushed me just now should be Yi Qian. He attacked me from behind and directly locked my neck. In that second, I really thought I was going to die. A third-year student stood to the side and said to his comrades with lingering fear, "It was very scary. What a strong, murderous aura. It didn't feel like a drill. Felt like a real battle." Chapter 2444. I was in the same situation as you. I also ambushed him from behind and locked him in a necklock. The student exhaled a mouthful of white phosphorus gas and shrugged his shoulders. My shoulder should be bruised from the fall, so I tried to defend against her, who knew that she would throw me sideways and hit my shoulder on a rock. It hurt so much that my face turned green. These 2 were the third-year students that Yi Qian had rushed out to take care of. When they talked about how they had been killed, their eyes were still filled with panic. The neck was the most vulnerable and fatal part of the body. Suddenly being locked from behind, that feeling was like being bitten on the neck by a ferocious beast. As long as the beast gently closed its mouth, the sharp fangs would pierce deeply into their necks. Then, with a forceful bite, kacha, the cervical vertebrae were bitten off. This feeling was too terrifying. Even now, the trauma was still lingering in their hearts and they still had lingering fears. Junior Yi Qian. I've seen it for myself. If He-kun were to go up against her, he probably wouldn't have much of a chance of winning. The student who was the first to be knocked out by Yi Qian gently rubbed his comrade's injured shoulder and said worriedly, "I'm afraid our scouting team will fall at the hands of Yi Qian." When the student whose shoulder was injured heard this, he endured the pain and said softly, "Don't scare me." 7 of us have died in battle. We still have 8 people left. Are you saying that 8 of us can't beat Yi Jian? Don't be an alarmist. What's so impossible about it? Look at the 2 of us. How much time did she use to take care of us? Was it even a minute? Not even a minute. And she took care of us from behind without anyone noticing. With her strength, it would be too easy for her to take care of the remaining 8. Yi Qian had left a deep psychological trauma in this student's heart. As he spoke, he touched his neck and a trace of lingering fear flashed in his eyes. He said softly, I can't help but want to look back, to see if she's standing beside us. As soon as he finished speaking, the student whose shoulder was injured reflexively looked behind him and heard his comrade snicker. Damn, you scared me to death. Let's not talk about it anymore. They're coming over. Seeing the other 4 dead comrades walking over with the dead freshman, the 2 of them stopped talking at the same time. The students who had been killed stood to the side. They maintained the most basic drill rules and did not inform their comrades nearby. They stood to the side and waited quietly. The thick smoke gradually dissipated, and the red team's tent reappeared before everyone's eyes. He-kun looked at the red team's tent, then at the students standing in the distance. Judging from their figures, there were no female soldiers in the tent. This meant that their 7 comrades had not finished off Yi Qian. What should we do? Are we just going to drag things out? The blue team student asked He-kun. Dragging things out isn't a solution. Either we attack or we retreat. We can't retreat. We've already made it this far, but we haven't destroyed their base nor captured Red Team's commander-in-chief, Yi Qian. If we retreat like this, wouldn't our brothers at the front have died for nothing? I don't agree with retreating. They found it hard to accept that 7 of their brothers had been killed in an instant. He-kun looked around and pursed her lips. If we don't retreat, we should at least destroy Red Team's base and capture Yi Qian alive. Leave it to me. You guys go and destroy the base. Sure. Red Team doesn't have many soldiers left. Split into groups of 4. The 4 of us will charge in and destroy the base. The 4 of you will deal with Yi Qian. Chapter 24:45. Everyone agreed with his suggestion. If they couldn't retreat or delay, then they had to charge out and fight. Later on, He-kun couldn't figure out how Yi Qian had found their hiding spot. The brothers who had rushed out to destroy the Red Team base station had clearly avoided his hiding spot, but Yi Qian had accurately found his position and attacked him. Yi Qian's attacks had always been fast, accurate, and ruthless. As long as she attacked, she wouldn't leave empty-handed. Out of the 4 blue team scouts, 2 of them had been taken care of by her. Hearing the commotion behind her, He-kun turned her head and saw a scene that made her heart skip a beat. Her body reacted far faster than her brain. With a loud roar, she raised her leg and swept it towards Yi Qian. When Yi Qian saw the wind from the kick, she knew she was up against a powerful third-year student. She grabbed the student's right arm with one hand and locked it behind his back. At the same time, she used one hand to support herself on the student's back and lifted her whole body into the air. She also raised her leg and swept it back with an even fiercer stance. Hand, hand, hand. My hand is broken. My hand is broken. This move of hers was very painful for the student whose right arm was locked behind his back. The huge twist almost dislocated his arm and shoulder. The pain was so intense that he couldn't help but scream out in pain. It was probably not just any pain. Yi Qian kicked away He-kun's attacking left leg. Furthermore, she kicked the other party's calf. When the student who was locked down with one arm screamed out in pain, He-kun's back was covered in cold sweat from the pain. Her calf was trembling from the pain. Her strength wasn't just any normal amount. She wouldn't break his calf, would she? He-kun resisted the urge to bend over and grab his leg to rub it. Her heart was screaming in pain. Only her forehead was tense. She couldn't break her technique. She definitely couldn't break her technique. She had to hold on. Yi Jian, on the other hand, knew how hard she had kicked him. Seeing the corner of his mouth twitching a few times, she let go of the student in her hand and asked, "It hurts, right? Do you want to rub it first?" Hikun would remember this sentence clearly even after a long, long time. He wanted to attack again. But because of her words, he really hugged her leg and rubbed it first. Yiqian did not expect him to really hug her leg and massage it. She had only mentioned it casually and did not really want him to massage it. The third-year student who had his arm twisted and was screaming in pain was thrown aside by Yi Jian. The dead student quickly ran to the side and was several meters away from Yi Jian. He had to run a few meters away. Yi Qian was already fighting Hikun, using his fists and kicks. When he saw Yi Qian raise his leg high up and chop down like a sword, hitting Hikun's shoulder, he couldn't help but cry out "Io" for Hikun. Although that kick didn't land on him, he felt pain for Hikun. Even the roots of his teeth were sore. Ouch! The dead student rubbed his shoulder and slowly turned it around. He was also in pain, but fortunately, his shoulder was not dislocated. Hikun was forced to kneel on one knee by Yi Qian. He was in so much pain that he was about to cry. How could a woman be so strong? Hikun, who came from a martial arts background, was strong. In a one-on-one fight, he was also an elite soldier. Although he was in so much pain that he was about to cry, the ferocity in his bones was also aroused. When Yi Qian pulled back his leg, he rushed over like a leopard. The dead student couldn't bear to watch the fight. He covered his face with his hands, but he didn't want to miss the excitement, so he stood in a safe area to watch the whole thing. Chapter 2446. He saw Hikun, who had won an award for physical fitness, get beaten up by Yi Qian again and again. The process was brutal, and every move was fatal. Hikun had won an award for physical fitness, but in front of Yi Qian, it was nothing. It gave him the illusion that Hikun was a first-year student. In the end, he saw Yi Jian make a move. She suddenly lifted her foot and stepped on Hikun's foot. Her whole body went around Hikun's back. Plop! Hikun was thrown to the ground by her, while she stood to the side and scathed. Damn, 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 damn. She. How did she do it? How did she do it? Like this, like that. She went around Hikun's back like a monkey, her feet not touching the ground, her hands locked onto Hikun's shoulders. When her feet touched the ground, Hikun fell to the ground with her back facing the sky. He saw the entire process, but he didn't see it at all. He didn't see how she threw Hikun to the ground. The students closest to her didn't see it clearly, and the students further away didn't see it clearly either. After Yi Qian finished off his opponent, she turned around to look. There wasn't a single student left on the red team. Even the 2 sentinels she brought with her had died in the fight against the other 2 third-year students. Seeing that the third-year student she had thrown to the ground didn't get up, Yi Qian took a step forward, bent down on one knee and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, senior, but time was tight. You were a difficult opponent, so I had to end it quickly." Hikun, whose head was still buried in the grass, waved her hand to indicate that she was fine and just wanted to lie down for a while. Yi Qian looked at the grass that was so thick that it could bury her face, then thought about the sound she made when she threw the third-year student over. She pursed her lips and smiled. Now she understood why he didn't want to raise his head. After Yi Qian left, the third-year student who was watching the fight patted Hikun's shoulder, who was still in the grass, and sighed, "Brother, you didn't lose too badly. Junior Yi Qian is very skilled, we still have to practice a little more." This time, they finally understood why the group of first-year students admired Yi Qian so much. After today, they had no choice but to admire him. They were convinced. Hikun, who had a mouthful of grass in her mouth, silently spat out the mouthful of grass foam. When she raised her head and opened her mouth, the corners of her mouth were stained with green grass paste, and there were also bits of grass stuck between her teeth. Yi Qian heard the sound of laughter. Then he heard the male student who had been thrown to the ground and chewed on the grass say angrily, "What's there to laugh about? I just ate a mouthful of grass. What's so funny?" It was still a little funny. At least she wanted to laugh. Yi Qian, with a slight smile, didn't stay in the red team's abandoned tent any longer. He quickly left alone. The sentries she had brought with her had all been killed, so she could only return alone. A report came from the rear through her earpiece. "The blue team has already begun to enter." The fake orders we issued have most likely been seen through. The third-year student in charge of technical support told us that the blue team's technical students have already analyzed that we have built a fake base station and will immediately rebuild their own servers. With the blue team's strength, it won't take them too long to cut off our fake base station and stop our fake orders. A conservative estimate is about an hour. Listening to the report, Yi Qian ran all the way back to the command center, which was 5 kilometers away. Took her about 40 minutes to get back. 5 kilometers wasn't a long distance, so it wouldn't take much time to run back. Chapter 2447. She also did not expect the fake orders to last for a long time. After all, the blue team's strength was there for all to see. If they really did not discover it after a long time, the leaders in the main tent would be the ones having a headache. Time seemed to pass very slowly. When the main tent saw that the blue team had finally cut off the red team's fake base station, the leaders all breathed a sigh of relief. Although there was a bad result, they did not lose their sense of direction. After reacting, they calmly carried out the next step. It was clear that they also had excellent military discipline. The blue team's technical students were very strong. After cutting off the red team's fake base station, the red team had no way to issue fake orders to the blue team's battalions and companies. Yi Qian, who already knew that the blue team's reconnaissance team had entered the red team's tent, felt that it was a pity, but he also applauded the blue team's strength. The red team's fake base station took a total of 1.5 hours, while the blue team's interception took only 40 minutes. 40 minutes was enough. The blue team's main forces had all changed directions, giving the red team enough time to move. Now it was time to fight head-on. Chen Yanjun sent the latest news. They had already discovered the blue team's main command center and were requesting Yi Qian's instructions. No rush. Hide well first and show yourself last. Yi Qian continued the Snowfield Brigade's dark style of fighting. Compared to fighting openly, she preferred to fight in the dark and catch the enemy off guard. Chen Yanjun slowly put away the binoculars and said softly, "Their command center is very close to the battle for the high ground. If we wait until the blue team's main forces arrive, it will be too late for us to show ourselves. Showing ourselves now is suicide." Yi Qian sneered. "The third-year seniors are not easy to deal with. Arranging for you guys to go over is not to send you to your deaths, but to take advantage of the opportunity to ambush. If you succeed, then you succeed. If not, at least you guys made a move." The third-year students were indeed very strong. Chen Yanjun's mobile battalion had no way of capturing the blue team's main commander alive. In this drill, the red team would win beautifully in the early stages, but as the fake base station was broken, the blue team would quickly adjust their battle arrangements. The further they went, the harder it would be for the red team. Yi Qian knew all this. At the same time, the blue team's battalions and companies could not communicate normally. They also lost contact with the command center, but they did not panic. The battalions and companies' commanders quickly opened up their electronic battle plans and very calmly. Why did they lose contact? Obviously, the communication system had been destroyed by the red team. It didn't matter if the communication system was broken, as long as they didn't panic. They are the future leaders of our country's national defense and the founders of our country's national defense. They have excellent military qualities, firm ideals, and tenacious fighting spirit. Among them, there were countless students who were elite future military officers. They were cultured, understood technology, and could fight. Even if they were to encounter a fatal situation, maintaining calm was a necessary quality for them. Our system has been breached by the red team, causing complete paralysis. We are now 10 kilometers away from the highlands. The end of the exercise is less than 3 hours away. Within an hour, we must conserve our forces and gather here. This is the rendezvous point for our forces. The other battalions and companies will arrive soon. Now that we have seen it, although the red team is a freshman, their strength is not to be underestimated. Remember, if you encounter the red team, it is best to eliminate them first. Chapter 2448. All the companies and battalions are definitely aiming for our final rendezvous point. Losing contact isn't scary. Our biggest problem now is how to break through the red team's obstruction and successfully rendezvous. The blue team battalions and companies began to discuss their battle plans. They all had a common goal after losing contact. Before communication was restored, they would all set out towards their final goal. Even though they were misled by the red team's false information, their final goal was still the same. Moving in this direction would not be wrong. This information exercise was exceptionally difficult. Even though the red team had seized control of the entire battle, the blue team's counterattack was quite fierce. As the overall commander of the red team, Yi Qian played the role of mobilizing the entire army and stabilizing the situation. The blue team's morale was high and fierce, while the red team was fearless and won the battle. In the main tent, applause rang out every once in a while. Applause for the red team's brilliance. Applause for the blue team's tenacity. At 3:30 in the afternoon, a mobile battalion of the red team launched a surprise attack on the blue team's command center, intending to destroy the blue team's base station. The blue team, who were already prepared, responded and launched their final attack at the same time. The battle at the front was getting more and more intense. Yi Qian, who had been staying in the command center all this time, listened to the latest battle situation with a serious expression. Sometimes, she would smile slightly, and sometimes, she would purse her lips and her eyes would emit a cold sharpness. It was obvious that she really wanted to go to the battlefield herself. But the rules of the exercise stated that the overall commander could not leave the command center and could not go to the battlefield. Therefore, when the 10 third-year technical students saw her like this, they were worried for Yi Qian. They felt that if Yi Qian personally led the troops, it would be even harder for the blue team to win. The rain, which had stopped, began to drizzle again around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The red and blue teams entered their final battle. The students running in the rain did not stop because of this. They needed to reach the final high ground. That was their final destination. No matter how strong the wind or the rain, they could not stop their footsteps. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the exercise ended. Yi Qian and the blue team's overall commander shook hands. In the rain, the two of them smiled at each other and together, they placed a bright red flag on the flagpole. In the rain, the color of the red flag was incomparably fresh. It added a touch of light to the gray sky. In the mountains, on the plains, all the students saluted the red flags that faced the wind and rain. In the wind and rain, the students in their battle uniforms stood tall and straight, saluting the red flag solemnly. Standing in the mountains, they seemed to be one with the green mountains and rivers. Even if the rain fell into their eyes were still looking forward without blinking. Where the red flag points, advance courageously. Generations of soldiers took over the red flag and shouldered the heavy responsibility of protecting the country. Even if they died on the battlefield, they had no regrets. The construction of your pseudo-base station surprised all of us. This is a very risky decision. If it fails, the red team will be forced into a passive position. In the end, the blue team will be able to complete the battle for the high ground without any effort. On the way back to the main tent, blue team's commander-in-chief summarized the drill with Yi Qian. He was quite interested in the fact that Yi Qian could come up with a pseudo-base station. Yi Qian smiled and said, "A drill itself is an adventure. Discovery, innovation, change, and improvement. These are things that normal training cannot give us, but a drill can." Chapter 24:49. At the end of the drill, Yi Qian slowed down his pace. Even the sharpness in his brows disappeared, leaving behind only a faint smile. "I have thought of failure, but I have more faith in the technical student's abilities. Since there is the existence of a pseudo-base station, why don't we also give it a try and challenge ourselves? If we fail, it doesn't matter. We can discover the root of the problem from our failure. If we succeed, it will be a change, an improvement, and even a breakthrough. Failure represents discovery. Success represents victory. So, whether we fail or not, we are not at a disadvantage. The existence of a drill is for the sake of discovery and victory. The existence of a drill is for the sake of discovery and victory." The blue team's commander-in-chief carefully considered these words. Gradually, the expression on his face became more and more solemn. He realized the difference between himself and Yi Qian. He practiced for the sake of winning or losing a drill, while Yi Qian fought for the sake of discovery and victory. The former defended, while the latter innovated. Information warfare did not require defending, but innovating. Just now, he was relieved that the blue team had won this drill. But now, he deeply understood that he had actually lost, and lost completely. When they reached the main tent, the blue team's commander-in-chief also said, "On the surface, we have indeed won, but in reality, I feel ashamed. We, the blue team, have lost." When the leaders in the main tent heard this, they could not help but look at Yi Qian. This female student's influence was really extraordinary. She could even make the winning team feel ashamed of their victory. However, this was indeed the case. Although the blue team had won, they had actually lost. They also thought so. With Yi Qian's military deception battle strategy, the blue team's conservative battle strategy had already lost. Just as Yi Qian said, the drill was not a drill for victory or defeat. The drill itself was a risk, discovery, innovation, change, improvement. This was the meaning of the drill's existence. Failure represented discovery. Success represented victory. Yi Qian's words later became a phrase that the National Science University wrote to every freshman. It was written by graduating seniors to the freshmen, and it became a tradition after a long time. Those leaders who didn't think highly of Yi Qian's battle strategy, and even thought that she was being too daring, felt their faces burn. Even a student could think of a direction, but as the leaders, they were still stubbornly clinging to the goal of winning, not even thinking of innovating or challenging it. Their awareness was even worse than a student's. The 3-day exercise ended quickly. That night, the last-minute train carried the freshmen and third-year students back to school. On the bus, the students were still discussing the drill in detail. The third-year students mentioned Yi Qian the most, saying that it was too difficult for them to win. But even if they won, they did not feel very excited about winning. A few of the third-year students who had fought Yi Qian head-on during the drill spoke with the most authority. He-kun told his comrades beside him in a very serious manner, "Yi Qian is quite skilled. I lost to her in less than 3 minutes. She can fight and command. That's what a first-year junior is like." The entire bus fell silent. The only sound that could be heard was the rumbling of the train moving forward. And the 10 seniors who had supported the first-year technical team also had the right to speak, especially when they mentioned that the construction of the pseudo-base station was all proposed by Yi Qian. Later on, when the brigade commander praised her, she even pushed all the credit to them. Such behavior made the third-year students in the bus admire her even more. Chapter 2450. This was military merit. She could have taken all the military merit for herself, but she generously gave it all to someone else. She was so open-minded that it was admirable. Yi Qian was indeed worthy of her reputation. In the train, the brigade commander said to political commissar Yu, after returning to school, "Train Yi Qian well. Others are under a lot of pressure, but the academy will give her 12 points. Write an observation report on her at the end of the year." "You are." Political commissar Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. He thought of a possibility and asked uncertainly, "Are you planning to send Yi Qian to a higher place?" The brigade commander nodded. "Her ambition is to join the field forces." "That's good. But with her abilities, the field forces won't give her much room to show off. She should go to the special forces. Yi Qian has a murderous aura about her. I think she will like to join the special forces." The main thing was that it would be a pity if a student like her didn't join the special forces. Yi Qian is indeed more suitable to join the special forces. However, our country doesn't have a female special forces unit. Which special forces unit should we send her to? Also, we have to ask for her personal opinion. Political commissar Yu thought deeper. His voice became a little tense. It's quite cruel to send a female student to the special forces. It was indeed a little cruel, but the country really needed female special forces soldiers like her. The brigade commander was silent for a while. He sighed and said, "If she goes to the field forces, She won't be able to show off her strengths. Let's wait and see. Write an observation report on her first. I will send it to the military when the time comes. Talents can't be buried. They have to be used properly. Political commissar, you lowered his voice even more. The military should have seen Yi Qian. 2 months ago, the leader of the academy brought Yi Qian to Beijing. Later, the leader went back to the military academy first, and Yi Qian came back later. You mean? The brigade commander had a serious look on his face. He leaned slightly towards the political commissar, who was sitting on the opposite bunk. The military has already noticed Yi Qian a long time ago? Did that mean that the military had discovered Yi Qian's abilities earlier than the military academy? Political commissar, you nodded lightly. I guess so. So, please don't recommend anyone for the time being, in case they don't fit in with the military's arrangements and end up doing bad things with good intentions. If I really want to train her, I'll send her to the army with the juniors and seniors during the holidays. She'll have to endure more hardships and experience the atmosphere in the army. I think the military will be happy to see that happen. After a long time, the brigade commander nodded slightly. That's fine, but we still have to write her observation report. This female student is tough and a little indifferent. She's a student without much ambition. Since she's a top student from the military academy, the academy should take care of her a little. The premise was that in the future, Yi Qian would be able to stand on his own and be able to stand on his own 2 feet. Yi Qian didn't know about the conversation between the brigade commander and the political commissar. At the moment, she and He Jing were listening to Su Wen. On May 1st, the drill between the freshmen and the blue team ended. Su Wen was called by the instructor for a lecture and didn't come back until 9:00 p.m. In the next 2 days, Su Wen had changed. At least, she didn't deal with it casually. During the drill with the juniors, Yi Qian had specially arranged for Su Wen to be in Song Jiqiu's battalion. 1 battalion was against the 3 battalions of the blue team. During the final siege, Su Wen was so scared that her face turned pale when she heard what Song Jiqiu said. The students of the 3 battalions of the blue team were brave and good at fighting. They were really like the enemy who killed people without batting an eyelid. Su Wen was spoiled, so she was directly pressed to the ground by a male soldier. The other party didn't show any mercy at all. Half of her face was directly bruised. She was scared at that time. Chapter 24:51. Su Wen lowered her head with lingering fear. She said softly, "The instructor said that I'm now in the observation period. If I don't pass, I'll be expelled. No one can plead for me then. I don't want to be expelled. If my dad knew that I was expelled, he'd probably want to shoot me." I thought that after entering the military academy and going through the initial military training, I just needed to make sure I didn't rank last and graduate with a military rank. Now that I think about it, I was too naive. There's no time for me to muddle along. In the end, I'll cut off my own path. I signed a military pledge. If I don't improve this semester, I won't be in the dorm next semester. Su Wen said in a low voice, and He Jing handed her a piece of tissue to wipe her tears. Su Wen, who was frightened by He Jing's advice, finally realized the seriousness of the problem. She didn't want to be expelled, but she knew her own problem. After crying, she smiled bitterly. "I couldn't bear hardship since I was young. When I came to school, I met you two who took care of me. Because of that, I became lazier and lazier. I felt that there was no need to work so hard." That night, Su Wen spoke for a long time. Yi Qian and He Jing listened to her quietly. Halfway through, the two didn't express their opinions. They only said a few words of encouragement. Other than that, they didn't say anything else. What Su Wen needed now wasn't encouragement, but change. She needed to change herself and not rely on others to encourage her. Only by changing herself seriously could she be truly independent. She probably knows her mistake. Let's see how it goes in the future. He Jing waited until Su Wen fell asleep before whispering to Yi Qian. She didn't smile like before and act like nothing happened. I think she's really reflecting on her mistakes. She also didn't want her roommate and comrade in arms to be expelled. But Yi Qian was right. They couldn't take care of Su Wen like before. They had to let go. Problems can't be developed in a day or two. Even though she's reflecting now, she still needs to change. Yiqian already knew what he should do to help Suwon. Naturally, he hoped that He Jing would do the same and help Suwon. In the wee hours of the morning, Yiqian leaned his head against the train window frame, closed his eyes, and slowly fell asleep. A 7-day holiday was equivalent to no holiday for them. After the 3-day exercise, the next 4 days were mainly for work related to the exercise. Commendation and self-criticism would be carried out simultaneously. The morning sun pierced through the clouds, bringing light to the city that had been raining for 3 days. In the east, the sun was floating at the edge of the clouds, like a dancing golden dragon. It was so dazzling that one could not look directly at it. Yiqian walked out of the campus of the National University of Science and Technology with her luggage. She arrived at the school at 4 in the morning and left at 6 in the morning. Yiqian thought that she would spend the next 4 days at school. However, the Southern Province Public Security Bureau called her on the 1st of May and told her that she needed to rush back to Southern Province. Not for anything else, but for the matter of Yi Jifan's family. She needed to show up. As for why she needed to show up, the Southern Province Public Security Bureau did not explain in detail. She had to go back to find out. After walking out of the school, Yiqian called Ho Zi, the Southern Province Public Security Bureau, and Ho Zi called the school. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the faint sunlight of Southern Province was already shining. Ho Zi, who woke up early, took the phone from the nanny. When she heard a clear Brother Z from the phone, Ho Zi smiled and said, "You're the same as old 6. It's too hard to find you. I was worried that you wouldn't be able to rush back to Southern Province on the 1st of May. Ho Zi had been paying attention to Yiqian's situation. Chapter 2452. With Ho Zi's explanation, Yiqian found out that Yi Jifan had already been taken away by the disciplinary committee, and that the ones who reported him for violating the law were none other than Sun Dongqing and Sun Ying. In such a short period of time, so many things had happened in the Southern Province. What was even more unexpected was that the ones who sent Yi Jifan to jail were actually Sun Dongqing and Sun Ying, mother and daughter. On the way to the airport, Ho Zi picked out the main points of Yi Jifan's case to Yiqian over the phone. "After being here for 2 months, we haven't been able to find out anything. It's all thanks to Sun Dongqing's letter of complaint that your sister didn't manage to find out the contents of the letter. But now that he's been locked up for so long and still hasn't been released, it's clear that the report is no small matter." Yi Jifan himself probably didn't expect that even though he tried so hard to guard against everything, he didn't manage to guard against the person who slept next to him. Oh right, there's also his daughter. She's changed her surname to Sunday. She's also a ruthless character. In order to get herself out of jail, she also reported Yi Jifan. Right now, Yi Jifan has been deserted by everyone. Even his only sister, Yi Jixiang, hasn't shown up. He's been left to fend for himself. When you see him, you don't have to be afraid. If there's a grudge, then there's a grudge. Deserted by everyone. Yiqian lowered his eyes slightly to hide the darkness in his eyes. To Yi Jifan, desertion was nothing. He didn't need any kinship, nor did he need any kinship. He only wanted one thing: power. He only needed that. As long as he had power, he could give up on his wife and daughter, but he could never let go of power. But now, he didn't even have power. Yiqian suddenly wanted to see Yi Jifan. He wanted to see what Yi Jifan had become after losing his power. He must be in a sorry state. He had painstakingly studied everything, but in the end, he ended up with nothing. Moreover, the ones who buried him were his ex-wife and biological daughter. Yiqian, who was sitting in the taxi, revealed a cold and sharp smile. "It's time for you and Yi Jifan to come to an end. The sooner you come back, the sooner you can settle it. In the future, you don't have to worry about people like him anymore." Before hanging up, Ho Zi said this to Yiqian with a smile. The sooner he came back, the sooner he could end it. Yes, there had to be an end. 2 lifetimes. She had waited for 2 lifetimes. She was just waiting for this life to end. Speaking of which, it was also the May Day holiday in her previous life. At the age of 20, she had taken the train for an entire day and night to Yi Jifan's house in the Southern Province. She had waited from morning to night just to see him. Once again, she begged him to give her the household register so that she could apply for an identity card. What did Yi Jifan say? Ha! He sat on the sofa and looked down at her with a cold expression. So what if you have an identity card? If I don't want to do something, even if you have an identity card, you can't do it. At that time, Yi Jifan had just entered the provincial party committee. He was at the peak of his career and was full of mettle. The heavens were clear, and retribution was not pleasant. At this time in her previous life, Yi Jifan was at the peak of his success. But in this life, he was in jail and had become a prisoner. With a cold smile, Yi Qian tilted her head and looked at the scenery outside the window. She had returned to the southern province because she wanted to see if Yi Jifan, who was now a prisoner, was still as arrogant as he was in her previous life. The plane landed in the southern province airport. As she walked out, she saw the powerful Hou Zi standing at the front. In his arms was the pregnant Xia Yiwei. Chapter 24:53. Yi Qian smiled deeply when he saw the two of them. Xia Yiwei also saw Yi Qian. She wanted to wave and greet him, but Hou Zi quickly pressed her hand down. Don't raise your hand, don't raise your hand. I'm standing right here. Are you afraid that she can't see me? Hou Zi was very nervous. When he first found out that Xia Yiwei was pregnant, he wanted to watch over her 24/7. Now that they found out that she was pregnant with twins, Hou Zi was in a combat-ready state 24 hours a day. She paid attention to Xia Yiwei at all times, afraid that she would hurt herself and the two children in her stomach if she was careless. Hou Zi, who had killed his way out of a bloody storm, was also an ordinary man in front of his wife and children. He would also go to the market with a basket to buy the freshest vegetables. He would also go to the baby counter to carefully pick out all kinds of things for the two children who were about to be born. If there was a difference, it would be that other people rode bicycles or motorcycles to the market, but he drove a luxury car there. After going there twice, a few farmers' market vendors recognized this man who drove a luxury car to buy vegetables. Xia Yiwei was not as nervous as him. When she heard him, she glared at him with her bright eyes and said coquettishly, "You're so nosy. You can't even raise your hand." No, the doctor said that I should raise my hand less to prevent the umbilical cord from wrapping around my neck. Hou Zi, who was determined to protect his wife and children, hugged Xia Yiwei tightly and slowly raised his hand to wave. Yi Qian saw Hou Zi hugging the pregnant woman who was about to jump up and greet him in time. His heart that was in his throat finally calmed down. Last time, when she joined the Jingxia team, they told her that Yiwei was pregnant with twins. Due to her old age, her health was not very good and there were signs of a miscarriage. When she heard that, she couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Now that she was about to jump up and greet him, Yi Qian was so worried that he took large strides. He was afraid that he would be one step behind, so he asked Xia Yiwei to wait for him for a while. When Hou Zi saw Yi Qian striding over, his flirtatious eyes revealed a faint smile. He knew that Lu Xiqing found a capable and likable girlfriend. Look, he must have seen his wife's actions just now and was worried, so he walked over with large strides. He was indeed very happy to help such a sensible and grateful sister-in-law. When Yi Qian came over, he immediately held Xia Yiwei's arm. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked him to pick me up. As she walked closer, her belly got bigger. Thinking about Xia Yiwei's behavior just now, Yi Jian was a little scared. I didn't want her to come over, but she insisted. I had no choice. You know that I've always been a henpecked husband. I'm afraid of your sister Yiwei. When she frowns and glares at me, even a tiger would turn into a cat. I wouldn't dare to disobey her. Hou Zi joked as she drove. Other men were afraid that others would know that they were henpecked, but when it came to Hou Zi, it was the opposite. He was afraid that others wouldn't know that he was henpecked. With one hand on her stomach, Xia Yiwei smiled and glanced at him. She said to Yi Qian, "Don't mind your brother-in-law. He's so nervous now. When I waved my hand just now, he was even more nervous than me. He even said that the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck." The two of them got their marriage certificate in April and were legally married. They planned to hold the wedding banquet after the two children were born. It would be more lively and festive when they each held a baby in their arms. Chapter 24:54. Yiqian thought for a while and said seriously, Brother Z is right. If they get older, they can't raise their hands too much. The babies don't have any toys to play with in their stomachs, so they can only play with their umbilical cords. Seeing that someone supported him, Ho Zi raised his eyebrows proudly. Honey, did you hear that? I'm not making a fuss. I'm just worried that the babies will be naughty and play with their umbilical cords like toys. Xia Yue snorted softly and smiled at Yiqian. Don't mind your brother-in-law. The older he gets, the more he looks like a child. Look at him, he doesn't look like an adult at all. As she spoke, she laughed happily. I'm really worried that I'll have to raise 3 children in the future. That'll be a lot to worry about. It was obvious that Xia Yue was very satisfied with the current situation. Her entanglement with Ho Zi for nearly 20 years had finally blossomed. She had already received the greatest happiness of her life. When she mentioned Ho Zi and the children in her stomach, her bright and mature face was full of gentleness. Yiqian was also happy for the two of them. He pursed his lips and smiled. That's good. In the future, the older child will play with the younger child. Sister Yue, you can just watch from the side and command them. Haha, that's right. I think so too. But your sister Yue doesn't like me. Ho Zi laughed heartily. His wife and children were everything to him. His world was his wife and children. Now, there was nothing more important in his world than making his wife and children happy. Xia Yue looked at her husband, who was laughing heartily. There was deep gentleness in her eyes. The man she loved was less flamboyant and less arrogant. Now, he only had a steady temperament that was as deep as the ocean. He was introverted and responsible. He had enough ability to hold up the sky for her and their unborn child. From an ignorant youth to an arrogant youth, and then to a steady middle-aged man. She had spent nearly 20 years waiting for this man to put away his crazy ambition. For her, for their love, he gave up his dark empire and stayed only for home. Xia Yue, who had a smile on her lips, looked at Ho Zi with gentle eyes. The man driving seemed to have noticed it, and his lips curled up into a satisfied smile. Yiqian, who was sitting next to them, could feel the deep affection between the two. Yiqian did not speak. In order not to interrupt the warmth between the two of them, she even held her breath. Looking at how happy they were, she sincerely wished them well. The tender moment was interrupted by Ho Zi. He stopped the car at a red light and turned his head to look at his wife, who was staring at the back of his head. He teased, Honey, if you continue to look at me like that, Xiao Yi will be so embarrassed that he'll ask me to pull over and run away. If sixth brother finds out that we left his girlfriend behind, I'm really worried that he'll come to our house in the middle of the night and beat me up. Xia Yue blushed slightly. She glared at the guy who made fun of her and said to Yiqian, I was thinking about something just now. Don't listen to your brother-in-law's nonsense. He's as thick-skinned as sixth brother. Indeed, Yiqian also noticed it. He did not expect that Master Ho San, who was feared by both the government and the underworld, would be like this in private. In his previous life, he could not find Ho Zi no matter how hard he tried. Was it because of Sister Yue that he retired from the underworld and no longer participated in the underworld? That should be the case. Otherwise, the boss of the security company in his previous life would have some information about Master Ho San. Chapter 24:55. In the previous life, Sister Yue and Brother Z lived the same blissful life as they did in this life. Yi Jian's gaze sneaked a peek at Xia Yue's big belly and realized that she was not sitting comfortably. She immediately turned around and passed a pillow to Xia Yue. Is your waist not feeling too good? Pillow with this. She was very attentive and seemed to know a lot. Xia Yue's heart skipped a beat. Her gaze unconsciously fell on Yi Qian's flat belly. Old Six, this devil didn't bully Xiao Yi, right? Yi Qian understood her gaze and instantly felt awkward. She and Captain Xia were still innocent. There was nothing going on between them. Xia Yue saw her expression and knew that she had misunderstood. Her red lips curved into a smile and said, Old Six is really lucky to find you. If he dares to bully you in the future, give me a call and I'll teach him a lesson. Ho Zi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she heard that. She said, If you teach Old Six a lesson, I'm really afraid that he will teach me a lesson in the future. You shouldn't teach him a lesson. You should at least care for your husband. She was reminding Xia Yiwei not to meddle too much. Both of them had their own opinions. Plus, it was not appropriate for others to interfere because of their profession. Xia Yiwei naturally understood her meaning. She raised her hand and patted Yi Qian's hand gently. She gave her a warm smile. Old Six was indeed her younger brother, but Yi Qian was a girl that she admired. Moreover, she was an introverted girl. She was indeed afraid that Yi Qian would suffer alone if she was wronged. She could see that Yi Qian was deeply in love with Old Six. If Old Six did something unscrupulous, Yi Qian was a girl with no one to rely on. If she was wronged, no one would stand up for her. Because of her background as a woman, she should take care of her. Although Xia Yiwei was cold and arrogant, she was kind-hearted and had a simple nature. Otherwise, she would not have been pestered by Hou Zi. Her kindness turned into a warm current that slowly flowed into Yi Qian's heart. It made Yi Qian believe that Xia Yiwei in her previous life must have been as happy and fulfilled as she was now. Hou Zi didn't notice Xia Yiwei's little movements. He drove the car on the highway and was no longer distracted. He concentrated on driving to the downtown area of Southern Province. After driving for about 20 minutes, Yi Qian said softly from behind, "Brother Z, Sister Yiwei is asleep. You can send Sister Yiwei home, I'll go alone." "I can't let you go alone. She's afraid that you'll be at a disadvantage." Hou Zi lowered the temperature of the air conditioner in the car by 2 degrees. Pregnant women were hot and covered with a thin blanket, so lowering the temperature by 2 degrees would ensure comfort. "Yi Zhifan wants to see you, so she's even more afraid that you'll be at a disadvantage. I'm also a little worried. One of them is an old fox in the bureaucracy, and the other is still a student. Although she's good, she's not as experienced as an old fox. Everyone will be at ease if she goes with you. Sixth brother will also be at ease." Hou Zi didn't think that he was a person who was passionate about other people's matters. However, regarding Yi Qian's matter, even if sixth brother wasn't involved, he would still help. He had no choice. When he first met Yi Qian, he saw the shadow of himself when he was young and ruthless in her. That was the kind of ruthlessness that never bowed down to fate and never admitted defeat. Even if her body was covered in scars, she would still hold her chin high and not lose her pride. This time, Yi Qian insisted on her own opinion. She smiled and said, "Brother Z, I really don't need you and Sister Yiwei to accompany me. Now that Yi Zhifan is in jail, I don't know if he will say anything unpleasant. I'm afraid that Sister Yiwei will feel sorry for me and get angry, which will affect her mood." Chapter 24:56. When it came to his wife, Hou Zi was naturally 100% cautious. He thought about it and nodded in agreement, but he was still worried. "We'll wait outside. If there's anything, you can call me immediately." Yiwei really liked Old Six as a girlfriend. When she was resting at home, other than meeting a few good friends, she would only walk around the neighborhood for the sake of the 2 children in her belly. Other than that, she would not easily leave the house. Ever since she found out that Yi Zhifan was taken away by the Discipline Inspection Commission, she kept an eye on him. When she found out that the Southern Province Public Security Bureau notified Yi Qian that he was coming back, she immediately asked him to book a plane ticket. She even instructed him to personally pick him up at the airport. She said righteously, "Your subordinates are all rough people who fight and kill. Don't scare my sister-in-law." He was a little jealous that she was so protective of him. Scare little Yi? When he dealt with Sun Yaozu, his trusted subordinates came back to report. From the beginning to the end, they were terrifyingly calm. They did not seem like newbies at all. He had no choice. His wife was so protective of Yi Qian, so he had to be more careful. Moreover, he also admired Yi Qian's way of doing things. After giving his instructions, Hou Zi did not say anything else. He more or less knew some of Yi Qian's private matters. When he saw the faint hostility between her eyebrows, he was relieved. She did not look like she would be at a disadvantage. If there was a grudge, then there was a grudge. If there was a grudge, then there was a grudge. When they arrived at the Southern Province Public Security Bureau, it was already 11 o'clock in the morning. In the end, Xia Yue did not accompany Yi Qian in. She sat in a cafe not far from the Public Security Bureau and waited quietly. After Yi Qian entered the Southern Province Public Security Bureau, she still needed to go through some procedures to see Yi Zhifan. She could only go and see Yi Zhifan after she had filled in the information. While she was filling in the information, the police officer who served her reported that Yi Qian had arrived at the Southern Province Public Security Bureau. The higher-ups had instructed that if Yi Qian came, they needed to report to the higher-ups. When Yi Qian finished filling out the information and went to see Yi Zhifan, Madame Li, who was far away in the capital, would know. Mrs. Li, who received a call from her old classmate, smiled elegantly. It was good that she was here. This little girl was harder to deal with than Sun Ying. However, no matter how difficult it was to deal with her, she was still a little girl. He could talk to her and analyze the pros and cons. He believed that she would make a choice. In the detention room, Yi Zhifan was sitting quietly, motionless like a statue. Yi Zhifan's eyes moved slightly. Soon, he saw someone standing in front of the metal door where he was locked up. The lock was pulled open and 2 police officers walked in. Yi Zhifan, someone's here to see you. Yi Zhifan, who was sitting quietly in the corner of the guardhouse, slowly raised his head and asked in a hoarse voice, "Who is it?" Ever since he was taken away by the disciplinary committee, he had never left this place. He did not go through the disciplinary committee's double standard procedure. He was taken away by the disciplinary committee that morning. Before he even got out of the car, the arrest warrant from the procuratorate had already arrived. Receiving reports, preliminary investigation of clues, filing a case for investigation, arrest warrant, transfer to the court for prosecution. All these processes went very, very quickly. It was so fast that every day that passed made him feel more and more hopeless. Someone was secretly pushing the entire investigation process, and someone was determined to pull him down. That stupid Sun Dongxing's report letter was just a trigger. Otherwise, it would not have happened so quickly. It was so fast that he had no way to deal with it. It was so fast that he clearly knew that this time, he was really going to fall. The metal door where he was locked up opened with a clang. The uniformed police officer was expressionless as he answered in a businesslike manner. "We'll know who it is when we get there." Chapter 24:57. Yi Zhifan didn't ask any more questions. He was a person who was very good at getting what he wanted. All these years he had been like this. He just didn't know if he could continue to hide from them. After walking out of the detention room and into the meeting room, Yi Zhifan knew who had come to visit him. When he was first brought in by the Commission for Discipline Inspection, he really wanted to see Yi Qian. However, no one paid any attention to his request, and no one told Yi Qian that he wanted to see her. When he finally gave up, Yi Qian came. "Yi Qian," he muttered softly. His gaze was locked on Yi Qian. Before he even sat down, he directly asked, "You're the one behind this?" He had 2 suspects. One was the young face in front of him that he had never looked at, but had made him suffer again and again. The other was Madame Li, who had been offended by Sun Ying. Other than these 2, he couldn't think of anyone else who wanted to mess with him. Yi Qian sat down and raised her eyebrows slightly. She smiled faintly and said, "Director Yi, you think too highly of me. I'm just an orphan. How could I have the ability to push Director Yi down? If Director Yi was honest, why would you be afraid of being investigated? Why would you be in jail? If you don't want people to know, then don't do it. Isn't Director Yi asking for all the trouble you're going through now? Director Yi, please don't think too highly of me. I really don't have the ability to do that." Yi Qian was also surprised by the speed at which Yi Zhifan had fallen. Under normal circumstances, it would take a certain amount of time for a report to be accepted. Then, it would take a long time for the preliminary investigation to be completed. Given Yi Zhifan's status as a provincial official, it would take him at least 3 months to complete the investigation. Now, he had used less than 2 months to transfer the case to the court for prosecution. The process was quite fast. Yes, with the help of the military and the Commission for Discipline Inspection, it was hard not to be fast. Seeing how serious and mocking she was, Yi Zhifan's expression darkened, but at the same time, he believed her. Although Yi Qian didn't get along with his family, the way she did things was indeed open and above board. She dared to take responsibility for her actions. This was also what he had taught Sun Ying to learn from Yi Qian. If it was not Yi Qian, then it had to be Madame Li. Yi Zhifan clenched his fists when he saw that she was dressed in a military uniform while he was in a prisoner's uniform. However, his eyes were calm as he said, "I have nothing to say to you. Now that I've ended up like this, it's exactly what you wanted. You've seen it, so please go back." After he finished speaking, he got up and was about to leave. "I've been waiting for you to end up like this for a long, long time. I'm very happy that you've fallen from grace today. I've finally gotten what I wanted." Facing the enemy that he had hated for 2 lifetimes, Yi Qian really didn't want to miss the opportunity to add insult to injury. Everyone said that she was broad-minded, but they were wrong. Facing someone she hated, she really couldn't be broad-minded. She couldn't do it, and she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to make things difficult for herself just to gain a good reputation. Hearing her slightly smiling voice, Yi Zhifan, who was getting up, felt a little sluggish. This niece of his wasn't a descendant of the Yi family. She didn't have the dark secrets of the Yi family. Even if she was ruthless, she was open and above board. She wasn't afraid of you finding out. "Sun Ying, oh Sun Ying, what right do you have to compete with Yi Jian?" Yi Jian thought, "Sun Ying, how can you compete with Yi Jian? You want to betray your own father in exchange for your own safety. You've lost from here on out." Thinking of all the things that his own daughter had done, Yi Zhifan's heart was filled with anger. Chapter 24:58. It was true that he did not try to get her out of the police station, but that was all he did. He secretly made connections, asked people he knew to take care of her, and not make things too difficult for Sun Ying. He did all these little things that could not be seen. With his ability, this was all he could do. Did he dare to go any further? With Madame Li and the power behind her, would he dare to get Sun Ying out? He did not dare. He did not dare and did not have the ability. But what about the end? Who knew what he had done? Did Sun Ying know? She knew nothing. Did Sun Dongxing know? If that stupid woman knew, she would not have written a report. Both of them hoped that he would not have a good time. Both of them thought that he was black-hearted and hard-hearted. Ha! That was because they had not seen him black-hearted and hard-hearted. Since they wanted to see him so much, then he would let them see him. This family had long fallen apart. He did not climb up and was pushed down by his own wife and daughter. Then he really thought that he was all alone. Seeing him slowly sit back down, Yi Qian could not help but raise his eyebrows. He did not ask anything. His bright black eyes held a faint smile as he looked at him calmly. He also saw the coldness that flashed across his face. "Yi Qian, you got what you wanted when I came in, but what about Sun Dongxing and Sun Ying? If we were to talk about harming you, those 2 mother and daughter are the ones who have harmed you the most." Yi Zhifan, who had sat back down, spoke very calmly. He had been an official for decades, but he still looked calm on the surface. "When I first came here, I did want you to come, but later I felt that there was not much point. But now I have changed my mind. There are some things that I still need to tell you." In the past, he wanted Yi Qian to come over and say something that would benefit him. He also wanted to secretly make a deal with Yi Qian so that he could escape. However, as the Commission for Discipline Inspection investigated further, some things gradually surfaced, especially Sun Xueqing's sacrifice. 2 days ago, 2 officers came directly to interrogate him. At this point, he knew that he could not make a comeback. Even if the person behind the jade pendant could not help him, he did not hope that the person behind the jade pendant could help him. Jade pendant, that's right, there was still the matter of the jade pendant. Thinking of the jade pendant, Yi Zhifan chuckled. "You really don't want that priceless jade pendant? This is what your mother left for you. Don't tell me you don't even want what your mother left for you?" Sitting down again, Yi Zhifan faced Yi Qian, who was calm and composed, as if nothing could affect her. He slowly began to talk about some things. "This piece of jade is a good thing. It pushed me step by step from my position as a village cadre to the position of the chief of the Urban Construction Bureau. I went from a village official to a small official. Yi Qian, if you had this piece of jade, wouldn't you have achieved meteoric success? Now that the jade pendant is in Sun Ying's hands, do you want to see Sun Ying soar in power and then come back to settle the score with you? Would you like to? Sun Ying had been bullied since she was young, and it was not easy for her to make a comeback. He did not believe that Yi Qian would let Sun Ying off so easily. Those videotapes, I thought about it. It should be your doing. Since you want to destroy Sun Ying's path to the Li family, you probably don't want to see her live a luxurious life. If that's the case, then all the more you should take back everything that belongs to you. Even if you don't want the power behind the jade pendant, it is still what your mother left for you. Maybe. Yi Zhifan paused intentionally and threw out another bait. Maybe you can use this jade pendant to find your biological father. Chapter 2459. The jade pendant, her mother's belongings. Finding her biological father. If it had been in her previous life, Yi Qian would definitely have been moved. But in this life, seeing that Yi Zhifan wanted her to fight Sun Ying to avenge him, the corners of Yi Qian's mouth curled up slightly. She said with a faint smile, "The jade pendant is just an inanimate object. You said it helped you achieve meteoric success, but why hasn't the person behind the jade pendant appeared yet?" These words struck Yi Zhifan's heart. He had thought about it before, but he couldn't understand. If the jade pendant helped him achieve meteoric success, then why hadn't the person behind it appeared now that he was in trouble? Yi Zhifan's face turned cold. He couldn't answer Yi Qian, and he didn't know how to answer her. When he saw Yi Qian's faint smile and understanding look, Yi Zhifan's heart suddenly sank. He, who had been sitting obediently, leaned against the marble platform in front of the iron window. He supported himself with one hand and asked in a low voice, "Do you know something? Otherwise, why would she be so indifferent after hearing him say so much?" Anyone would be moved by a chance to achieve meteoric success, a chance to get rid of all obstacles in their way. But why was Yi Qian so calm? It was as if she knew all along. Yi Qian saw that his pupils had contracted and couldn't help but laugh. "What do I know? I know that Director Yi achieved meteoric success because of the person behind the jade pendant. I know that Director Yi is where he is today because of Sun Dongxing and Sun Ying. I know all of this. I've heard about it outside, and Director Yi told me personally. How could I not know?" He wanted to ask her if she knew about the power behind the jade pendant. Ha! She wouldn't tell him. She would let him think and guess on his own. The more he wanted to know, the more she wouldn't tell him. She was deliberately torturing him like this. In her previous life, she had gone through too many days like this. Since she had the chance to repay him in this life, she would definitely repay him well. How could Yi Zhifan not know her intentions? But what could he say? For a moment he clenched his teeth. The fire in his heart burned brighter and brighter. In the end, it burned until his eyes turned red and his expression was especially gloomy. "Yi Qian, I don't believe you won't be moved. The jade pendant was left to you by your mother. It's very likely that your biological father gave it to your mother. I don't believe you won't be moved." He gritted his teeth as he spoke, pausing between each word, as if he was trying to increase his bargaining chip. This is such a good opportunity, an opportunity that can prevent Sun Ying and Sun Dongxing from ever leaving prison. I don't believe that you won't be tempted. It had to be said that Yi Zhifan was really good at manipulating people's hearts. But to Yi Jian, what he said really didn't appeal to her. She was still smiling faintly. She looked at Yi Zhifan as if he was a clown on stage. Her eyes were full of mockery. "It's true that the jade pendant was left behind by my mother. I will definitely take it back, but not now. As for who my biological father is, you don't have to worry about it, Director Yi." Who was her biological father? She already knew who her biological father was. Why should she care so much about the jade pendant? The jade pendant couldn't be touched. After Yi Zhifan's downfall, the military and the military commission were secretly investigating the truth behind her mother's death. She didn't believe that the person behind the jade pendant could remain calm. He would definitely do something. Now, she just had to wait for him to make his move. She wasn't the only one waiting. The military and the military commission were probably waiting too. Chapter 2460. Seeing Yi Jian's indifference, Yi Jifan, whose face was full of malice, suddenly let out a strange laugh and said in a sinister voice, "Do you know why I didn't give you the jade pendant? Do you know why Granny Yi wants to torture you to death? Do you know why Sun Yaozu wants to take your life personally? Yi Qian, if you want to know, let's make a deal. Don't worry, this deal is very beneficial to you. And I only have one request. Don't let that unfilial daughter take a step out of prison." Blood relatives, blood enemies. Father and daughter had come to this point. You can't wait for him to die, he can't wait for you to die. Yi Qian frowned slightly and said softly, "Fortunately, my father doesn't have the blood of the Yi family running through his veins." She was glad that Granny Yi brought her homeless father back from the outside. She was glad that her father didn't have any blood relations with the Yi family. She was even more glad that she had her father to protect her when she was young and felt the warmth of a family. Yi Jifan suddenly looked up when he heard that. You knew everything." Yi Qian smiled faintly in response. She didn't say anything, but it was as if she had already said everything. Faced with her silent smile, Yi Jifan felt as if he had suddenly been submerged in a cold pond. The icy water pierced his bones, causing his limbs to stiffen to the point that he couldn't move at all. No wonder she didn't have any attachment to the Yi family. No wonder she hated Granny Yi and Sun Yaozu to the bone. No wonder she always hoped that he wouldn't have a good ending. So she knew everything. After all the calculations, she actually knew everything that they had planned. Yi Qian saw his expression twitch as if he had been greatly agitated. She felt very happy and slowly said, "I know everything that I should know. You wanted to raise me into a useless person, and you wanted to hide things from my mother. All these, I know everything. All these, I know. That's why I've been watching all of you jump around, watching all of you scheme and scheme." At this moment, Yi Jifan suddenly felt that it was funny. They had calculated so much and schemed so much. They all thought that they were smart enough to have a child under their control. Who knew? Who knew that in the end all of them would be played by a child? Laughable, truly laughable. You think you're smart, but you don't know that there's always someone better than you. A mere child turned the Yi family upside down. Granny Yi, you really are a lucky old lady. If you had left just one step later, you would have been angered to the point of death by Yi Qian. She knew everything. She watched. Sun Xueqing's daughter was too smart. She knew everything, yet she didn't say anything. Could he still pretend that he didn't know anything and just stand at the side and watch coldly as the Yi clan schemed and schemed? In her eyes, everyone in the Yi clan was probably just a bunch of clowns. The more they jumped around, the more miserable they would end up. Sun Yaozu was killed inexplicably. Yi Zhixiang was forced to close down the company and leave with Old Man Yi. Old Lady Yi died of a stroke, and he was reported by his ex-wife and daughter and thrown into prison. They thought they got all the benefits left by Sun Xueqing, but in the end, none of them ended up well. Yi, too. How laughable! How laughable! Everyone hoped that Yi Qian would accomplish nothing and become a useless person. Then, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. In the end, they became useless people. Yi Qian would be able to do whatever he wanted. How ironic! They thought so well, but the reality was so ironic. Chapter 2461. He couldn't get out now either. Everything that had happened was brought up one by one, making him realize that someone was purposely messing with him to make him fall from grace and be locked up in prison. Since he couldn't get out, he couldn't let the people outside have an easy time either. Yi Jifan stared at Yi Qian with his hazy eyes. The voice that came out of his mouth was cold and gloomy. Yi Qian, you are indeed very smart. So smart that even I am afraid of you. No wonder. A strange smile appeared on his face, making him lose his scholarly aura. No wonder that idiot Sun Ying couldn't win against you. Even I am no match for you. How can an arrogant idiot like her win against you? That's why he wanted to use her hand to make sure that unfilial daughter, Sun Ying, never leaves prison. She didn't even care about their father-daughter relationship. He really didn't expect her to come and see him after she got out. He could still remember the proud expression on her face the last time they met. "Father, my good father, you still want to have a son? Heh! Don't even think about having a son in this lifetime. You want to kick me away so that you can rise up the ranks? Dream on. I've been waiting day and night in prison for you to come and save me. But you want to have a son with a slut? Father, wake up. If I don't have an easy time, you won't have an easy time either. Seeing you locked up now, I'm so happy. Don't you think this is retribution? You don't even want your own daughter. Just stay in prison for the rest of your life." His daughter ran over and deliberately said those words. That expression, that look, made him want to vomit. Retribution? Then let's see who gets this retribution. Yi Jifan smiled coldly. He and Yi Qian entered into a formal negotiation. Yi Qian, the person behind the jade pendant, is indeed not simple. After your mother died, I received a letter. Letter? The person behind the jade pendant sent a letter to Yi Jifan? Was this giving Yi Jifan something to use against him? Yi Qian didn't believe it. Yi Jifan did not expect her to believe him immediately. They had 15 minutes to talk, and he could convince her to believe him. There was no one else in the meeting room to disturb them. Yi Jifan lowered his voice and said clearly, "The mailing address and sender are unknown. The person in the letter told me that if I want to be promoted from a village official to a high-ranking official, as long as I follow his instructions, I can achieve it. The letter also told me that there was a jade pendant among your mother's belongings and asked me to get it. But I didn't expect that old lady Yi also knew about the jade pendant. Why did old lady Yi send you to my house for foster care? It was because her biological daughter and son-in-law received benefits, and the condition was that they could not continue to stay in Shuka village. The person who proposed this condition is none other than the person behind the jade pendant." When Yi Jifan said this, he paused for a moment. At the same time, he carefully observed Yi Qian's facial expression. He needed to know if Yi Qian would be interested in what he said. He carefully observed Yi Qian's facial expression. Every time he said a sentence, his gaze would be extremely careful. He needed to know which sentence would move Yi Qian the most. But unfortunately, he didn't find anything different. She still had that indifferent expression that was as calm as water, with no desire for anything, and that pair of eyes that were as dark as night did not have the slightest ripple. When the bright light fell into her eyes, when she looked at him again, it actually gave him the illusion that all the careful calculations in his heart had been seen through by her, and there was nowhere to hide. Chapter 2462. Even though they only met for 10 minutes, Yi Jifan knew that it would be difficult for him to see Yi Qian again, so he sped up and told Yi Qian more things that no one else knew about. When you were in elementary school, old madam, you didn't bring Yi Zhixiang and her family back for the new year, but to hide from disaster. Everything they do outside is a major violation of the law. Otherwise, with their connections, how could they have acquired such a large business? Just like me, they were all controlled by the person behind the jade pendant. Yi Qian's interest wasn't completely piqued. Sun Yaozu was wanted for arrest, so naturally he had done something illegal. Now that he had been dealt with by himself, Yi Jifan's words were useless. Her calmness made Yi Jifan grit his teeth and say, "I can tell you with certainty that the person behind the jade pendant had been plotting to kill your mother for a long time, and old Madame Yi knew it very well. That's why she forced your father to leave home to work again, and in the end he died in an accident. Then, she used your mother's death as an excuse to make your mother restless every time she came back from a vacation. When you were 2 years old, your mother originally wanted to retire from the military and focus on raising you, but old Madame Yi didn't agree. The last time your mother came back, she received a notice to return from the military. Old Madame Yi told Yi Zhixiang that her chance had come, and I received a letter from the person behind the jade pendant at that time. The letter told me that if I followed his arrangements, I would get everything I wanted." Just as he was about to get to the main point, the policeman holding Yi Qian in custody suddenly walked in and reminded him, "There are still 5 minutes left. Hurry up." The policeman's attitude towards Yi Qian, who was wearing a military uniform, was quite polite. In this day and age, there were very few girls who could get into military schools. While being polite, there was also a hint of admiration. The policeman's arrival interrupted Yi Jifan's train of thought. He, who had always been cautious, realized that he had said too much. He pressed his lips together and temporarily swallowed his unfinished words. He had said so much, but Yi Jian, who was sitting outside the iron window, dressed in a military uniform and looking like a bamboo soaring into the sky, did not react at all. Yi Qian's heart was not as calm as it seemed on the surface, because Yi Jifan had said, "If we follow his arrangements, we will get everything we want." Grandpa Zhen had told her that the jade pendant was priceless, but it wasn't a good thing. Before she had enough power, it would be a disaster. Grandpa Zhen knew that his mother's sacrifice was not simple. He also guessed that his mother's sacrifice had something to do with the Yi family. But why didn't Grandpa Zhen investigate? Was it because the relationship between the old lady and her mother was not good enough? No, definitely not. The reason why her mother was able to join the military was because of Grandpa Zhen's recommendation. Therefore, during the era when it was difficult for female soldiers to join the military, her mother became a soldier and became one of the first female special forces soldiers in our country. Yi Qian's mind was not calm at all. As she listened to Yi Jifan's words, she thought quickly. Soon, she thought of what Captain Xia had said. She thought about how her mother's life had been erased. After a flash of inspiration, Yi Qian understood Grandpa Zhen's concerns. At the end of the day, it was because the other party held a high position and was not someone ordinary people could shake. Grandpa Zhen did not want her to risk her future for the sake of revenge, so he reminded her again and again that before she could do anything, she had to be capable first. Chapter 2463. With her abilities, she could walk into the eyes of the higher-ups in the military and occupy a position that no one dared to touch. Then, she would face less resistance when she tried to find out the truth behind her mother's death. That was indeed the case. The involvement of the military and the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection allowed her to stay out of the matter and not be targeted by the power behind the jade pendant. It was all because the military had protected her. Captain Xia reported everything to Commander-in-Chief Xia, and Commander-in-Chief Xia reported everything to the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection. The Military Commission for Discipline Inspection secretly set up an investigation team to protect her. So, no matter how much she wanted to know who killed her mother, she could not be impulsive and disappoint the people who protected her. Faced with Yi Jifan's temptation, Yi Qian became calmer and calmer. The apple that was handed to her was indeed fragrant and sweet and full of temptation. But compared to the concern and worry that so many people had for her, she had to reject it. She rejected it on the inside, but on the surface, she had to show some emotion. Only then would Yi Jifan have the motivation to continue talking. As for how much of his words were true and how much of it was false, she would slowly choose and reduce it. 5 minutes passed and then another minute passed. Faced with Yi Qian's calmness, Yi Jifan was a little anxious. That's right, Yi Qian was not Sun Ying. After she underwent a big change in middle school, everything she did and said made him feel troubled. From this, he knew that she was a mature girl and could not negotiate with her as if he were coaxing a child. Plus, she always knew that the Yi family had killed her mother and that the Yi family had done something wrong to her. In that case, it was even more impossible for him to casually say a few words to make her agree. He had to say more things that interested her. He suddenly leaned a little closer to Yi Qian and lowered his voice. Your mother was definitely not sacrificed. She was killed by someone else. The person who killed your mother was not someone else, but someone who helped me and Sun Yaozu. What did Yi Qian want to know? From her face, Yi Jifan could not tell what she wanted to know. He could only keep probing and telling her what he knew in order to figure out what Yi Qian wanted to know. He had said so much to no avail. He didn't believe that she wouldn't be interested in what he was going to say next. Yi Qian, you don't have to take the jade pendant, you don't have to find your biological father. But don't you want to know who killed your mother? Not only did the letter mention the jade pendant, it also clearly told me that your mother doesn't have long to live. After saying so much and waiting for so long, Yi Jifan finally saw the ripple in Yi Qian's eyes. Her calm gaze suddenly shot straight at him, like a cold arrow shooting at him. The coldness in her gaze made his back abruptly turn cold. The iron chain under his feet made a clanging sound. Yi Jifan, who was shocked by the gaze, unconsciously moved his feet and adjusted his sitting position. Although he was frightened, Yi Jifan breathed a sigh of relief. He finally got to the bottom of her heart. That's good. That's good. His biggest bargaining chip would definitely be her guarantee. But before that, he needed her to agree to his request. Then he would tell her the biggest secret he knew. Yi Jifan steadied his mind and said in a low voice, "If you want to know, I will tell you everything I've found over the years. And the deal I want to make with you is very simple." Chapter 2464. His low voice was filled with malice as he stared unblinkingly at Yi Qian. Every word was filled with malice as he slowly said, "I only want Sun Dongxing and her stupid mother to stay, and I will tell you more about the jade pendant. There are some things you know, but there are some things you may not know." Yi Qian was indeed a little shaken. Earlier, she had deliberately looked cold, but now, she wanted to hear what else Yi Jifan had to say. She knew that her mother was most likely harmed by the person behind the jade pendant. Yi Jifan was the only one who had contacted the person behind the jade pendant. Perhaps he did know something. "What else do you know?" she said coldly. "Tell me everything in one go. Don't keep me in suspense." Yi Jifan, who had calmed down a little, looked around, then looked at Yi Qian. "If you agree to my request, I can tell you." "Okay. Didn't he just want to use her to prevent Sun Ying from escaping?" "Sure." She didn't want to let Sun Ying escape either. When Yi Qian agreed, Yi Jifan didn't have any doubts. But her agreement wasn't enough to make him feel at ease until she nodded. Yi Jifan, who had chains on his hands, crossed his fingers and said his last bargaining chip. "The letter mentioned the jade pendant and your mother's death." These words finally caused great waves to surge in Yi Jian's heart. The shocking waves surged and fiercely slapped her heart, causing the tips of her fingers to tremble slightly. "The letter mentioned the jade pendant and your mother's death." This sentence was even more evidence that her mother was harmed. This was evidence. When she heard Yi Jifan mention the letter again, Yi Qian knew that the letter did exist, and that Yi Jifan might have kept it. She needed the letter in Yi Jifan's hands. "Deal, but I need the original letter in your hands." Yi Qian emphasized the word, original. "That's exactly what I was thinking." It was only then that Yi Jifan truly believed Yi Qian. "I've kept this letter in the bank. You can go and get it when you get out later. Be careful when you read it. I've kept it for nearly 20 years, so the paper is very fragile." It was ironic that in the end, the person he believed was Yi Qian, whom he had persecuted. After looking at Yi Qian for a few seconds, Yi Jifan retracted his gaze to hide the coldness that was about to disappear from the depths of his eyes. After a few seconds of silence, he said in a deep voice, "Sun Ying has Madame Li behind her. I suspect that Madame Li approached her and gave her the idea to report me. Sun Ying is my daughter. I know her. Madame Li made a promise, so she dared to attack me, her father. Yi Qian, what I want Sun Ying to know is that it's better to rely on yourself than on others. If you agree, you'll be going against Madame Li. Do you dare?" If it wasn't for the matter with Sun Xueqing, the jade pendant, and his meteoric rise, he would have admired Yi Qian very much. Even if she had someone behind her, everyone could see how hard she worked. That was why he reminded Sun Ying again and again that if she wanted to surpass Yi Qian, she had to work hard and have the ability to compete with Yi Qian. But Sun Ying was too ambitious. She only wanted to use others to deal with Yi Qian. Even if she still did that, as her father, he didn't mind teaching her another life lesson. Yi Qian was a little surprised. She didn't expect Yi Jifan to remind her. Chapter 2465. Don't be surprised. Putting aside all that, you are indeed a child that I admire very much. You don't have the selfish blood of the Yi family in you, and you are stronger than your mother. I'm afraid you take after your father. Yi Jifan spoke lightly. His voice was filled with loneliness. Neither of old Madame Ye's children are her biological children. The only real child is Yi Zhixiang. So, Why does she fight for Yi Zhixiang and make things difficult for me and your father? It's because we are not her biological children. Yi Qian couldn't help but look up when he suddenly heard an old secret that he didn't even know about for 2 lifetimes. He really didn't expect that Yi Zhifan wasn't old Madame Ye's biological son. Now, many things could be explained. No wonder old Madame Yi treated Yi Zhixiang's family so well. She had 2 sons and 1 daughter, and only the daughter was her biological child. Now, he could see Yi Zhifan's sincerity in negotiating. Sun Ying made Madame Li a joke in Beijing. Even if she had a deal with Sun Ying, she wouldn't let Sun Ying go. Madame Li has power and influence, but Director Yi, don't forget that it wasn't Madame Li who sent Sun Ying back to Nan province, but the military. So, even if Madame Li wants to make a move, she has to consider the military. After Yi Qian finished speaking, Yi Zhifan understood what he meant. The reason why Madame Li had to consider the military was because of the Deputy Chief of Staff. Yi Zhifan's eyes flickered when he saw that Yi Jian had finally relented. He lowered his eyelids to hide the coldness in the depths of his eyes, as well as the darkness that flashed through his eyes. His low voice came softly, as if he was afraid that the walls might have ears. Just as you said, the person behind the jade really did want to waste you. Also, he didn't want your mother's comrades to know about your existence. The reason why I gave the jade to Sun Ying was because he told me to raise Sun Ying well. From this, I could tell that he wanted Sun Ying to replace you. In the past 20 years, I've only contacted him 4 times, and each time I did as he told me to. After Sun Yaozu was killed, he called and suspected that I killed Sun Yaozu. From this, I was even more certain that Sun Yaozu had been working for him. So, if you want to find traces of that person, you can first check what Sun Yaozu has been doing in the coastal area for so many years. Hearing this, Yi Qian raised her eyebrows. All these years, Sun Yaozu had been working for the person behind the jade pendant? They're all ordinary people. Naturally, they want to have wealth. It's normal for the person behind the jade pendant to ask Sun Yaozu to help him accumulate wealth. Back then, when Sun Yaozu went out, he suddenly made a fortune and came back. The price was that one of his eyes was blinded by your mother. I believe you know about this. Sun Yaozu, whose eyes were injured, left the village. Before he left, old Lady Yi even took away the things your mother left behind. It was just a cover. Otherwise, how could Sun Yaozu save up hundreds of millions of yuan when one was old and the other was disabled and didn't know anything? Yi Qian pursed her lips slightly. She had missed this point. When she had dealt with Sun Yaozu, she hadn't thought in this direction. It seemed that if she wanted to investigate the person behind the jade pendant, she could start from Sun Yaozu's previous company. She might be able to get more clues from there. Yi Zhifan saw that Yi Qian's expression was no longer as calm as before. When she looked up, her gaze was like a knife, flashing with a fine cold light. He was even more certain that she had set her heart on him. Chapter 2466. Suppressing the sneer in his heart, he continued, Last year, I took a stab for Du Kaiwei. He is the eldest son of the Deputy Chief of Staff Du, and it was also his arrangement. That's how I managed to establish a relationship with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du. Before your mother died, he wrote a letter to me and established a relationship with old Madame Yi. Later on, he was able to promote me from a village official to a provincial official. Then, he got Sun Yaozu to do things for him. Later on, he even arranged for me to save Du Kaiwei and establish a relationship with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du Yiqian. The person who caused your mother's death is someone from the military, and he has a lot of power. It won't be easy for you to find him. Even if you find him, how are you going to take revenge? He's not like me. I don't have a strong foundation, and once something happens, everyone will push me down. But he's not like me. He had such power 20 years ago, and 20 years later he's still the same. He can even deceive an important deputy chief of staff. Yi Qian, your enemy is not simple. I have a suggestion. You can hold on for the time being and see if you can find your biological father first. Yi Zhifan was a scheming person. Now that he knew it would be difficult for him to get out, he didn't mind giving Yi Qian some pointers. Of course, he didn't want to rely on Yi Qian to get him out of here. What he was doing now was just to make Yi Qian believe in his sincerity. Other than that, he had no other plans. When Yi Jian heard that he was making suggestions for her, the coldness on her face almost disappeared. She raised her eyebrows slightly, giving Yi Jifan the illusion that she wanted to continue listening. Seeing that she really believed him, Yi Jifan's expression became more sincere. Your mother has always been in the military, so your father should be in the military too. Go to the military when your mother was alive and look for him. Maybe you can find your father, and then slowly investigate who wanted to harm your mother. You can even tolerate our family for more than 10 years, so 3 to 5 years won't make a difference. What's more, now that you've made a name for yourself and know a commander-in-chief, you should establish yourself and gain the attention of the higher-ups in the army. You should get to know those who are really powerful and influential. Then you can slowly investigate your mother's matter. This will be more reliable and safer for you. This was Yi Jifan's suggestion. It was indeed sincere and sounded like he was thinking for Yi Jian. There was nothing strange about it at all. But to Yi Qian, this was the scariest part of Yi Jifan. He, who didn't care about his family, was indeed talented and realistic. He could clearly see the situation he was in. After reminding her so much, he didn't ask for anything other than Sun Ying not being able to leave prison. This was because he knew that she wouldn't agree to any of his requests. Since that was the case, why should he embarrass himself? At this point, Yi Jifan was still calmly planning. This time, he wasn't planning how to climb up, but how to deal with the people outside who wanted to pull him down. He wanted to see her go against Mrs. Li. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reminded her of what kind of person Mrs. Li was. The reason he reminded her was very simple. He wanted to see if she had the courage to agree to it. If she didn't, he wouldn't lose anything. At most, he would be disappointed. If she dared to do it, it meant that she did have someone behind her, and that person was powerful enough to compete with Mrs. Li. This was the scariest part of Yi Jifan. He was always looking for the biggest chance of survival in the cracks. I've said so much, and you've seen my sincerity. Yi Qian, you already know what I want. Sun Ying. Sun Dongqing. 5 minutes had passed. Yi Jifan stood up and left. When he mentioned the mother and daughter he hated the most, his elegant features were gloomy and vicious. Don't even think about leaving. Chapter 2467. He wasn't as stupid as Sun Dongqing, who even tried to get Yi Qian to come out and save Sun Ying. What a joke! After doing so many things, did she still think that Yi Qian wouldn't hold a grudge against her? Only stupid people would dream of unrealistic things. A truly smart person would use everything to their advantage to protect their own interests. As for him, he didn't want to protect his own interests. What he wanted was to let the people outside do the dirty work. As Yi Jifan walked, the sound of the chains clanging could be heard. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of the chains dragging on the ground sank into people's hearts. Yi Qian stood up and looked at Yi Jifan, who had walked a few steps and turned back to look at him. When their eyes met, Yi Qian chuckled. There seemed to be another meaning in that chuckle. It was clear, indifferent, and a little sharp. Yi Jifan suddenly regretted turning back to look at her. He shouldn't have turned back just now. He should have kept walking forward. When he turned back, her chuckle told him that she knew everything. It was true that he was harmed by the mother and daughter pair, but the real culprit was Yi Qian. If she hadn't sent the videotape to Madame Li, this wouldn't have happened. The battle between him and Yi Qian wasn't over yet. He didn't want to let the mother and daughter pair go. But Yi Qian, he never wanted to let her live a good life. He never wanted to. Yi Qian was one of the reasons why he ended up in this state. They had been fighting for more than 10 years. Then let's continue fighting. What reconciliation? Let bygones be bygones? He didn't believe in that nonsense. Yi Qian wouldn't forgive him, Yi Jifan. She definitely wouldn't let him go. Whether it was Sun Ying or Sun Dongqing, she would settle her debts one by one and settle them one by one. She wanted to settle the score, but Madame Li still wanted to use Sun Ying. One wanted to settle the score, and the other wanted to use her. Then let the two of them fight. It didn't matter who won or lost. What mattered was that they were fighting. That was what Yi Jifan was thinking. Compared to Sun Ying, who pretended to be ruthless but didn't take any action, Yi Jifan was more skillful. Unfortunately, Yi Jifan was a paranoid person. He was worried, so before he left, he turned back to take a look. That look, Yi Jifan knew things were bad. Seeing Yi Qian smile, he felt a chill in his heart. Seeing the panic on his face, Yi Qian's smile deepened. Yi Jifan, who had turned his head, did not immediately look away in panic. With a calm expression, he said coldly, "You should go and see Sun Ying. She wanted to trample you under her feet so much. In the end, you won, but she didn't care at all. She's still in jail and can't get out. You should really go and see her. See her as a winner. Isn't this more interesting? Isn't this more interesting?" Not bad. It was indeed very interesting. Seeing Yi Jifan panic and become confused, she really felt that it was extremely interesting. In her previous life, she didn't have the ability to fight a battle of wits with Yi Jifan. In this life, it was different. In this life, she had finally waited for Yi Jifan to fall from grace. She had waited for an outcome. Every member of the Yi family had a part to play in her mother's sacrifice. Their greed and selfishness caused her parents to die young. 2 lives. She had waited 2 lives for revenge. Now that she had waited for this day, how could she let Yi Jifan get what he wanted? So what if Sun Ying got out? With Madame Li's personality, would she let her have a good life? No, even if Sun Ying got out, she wouldn't have a good life. Chapter 2468. The iron door closed with a clang, followed by the sound of the lock. Yi Jian turned around and walked out of the shady room. However, what Yi Jifan was scheming against was possible. With Du Jai and the family Xia's relationship with the Du family, it was possible that they would face off against Madame Li in the future. But it was definitely not now. There was one more thing that Yi Jifan was right about. Her enemy was indeed not simple. All the clues pointed to the person who caused her mother's death being a high-ranking official in the military. Only someone like that could slowly push Yi Jifan from a village official to a high-ranking official. Grandpa Zhen knew, she knew, Captain Xia knew, the military and the Commission for Discipline Inspection all knew, which was why they were so cautious. As she walked, Yi Jian slowed down again. She muttered, "Train Sun Ying well," and her delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly. "Raise Sun Ying well." The jade pendant was her mother's keepsake. Yi Jifan suspected that it was a keepsake that her father had left for her mother. She might be able to find her father. The jade pendant was not in her hands. It was in Sun Ying's hands. The person who knew the origin of the jade pendant even asked Yi Jifan to raise Sun Ying well and at the same time, to raise her to a useless state and not let anyone find out. After leaving the prison, Yi Qian walked towards the coffee shop in Hozi where the couple was waiting for her. As she walked, she thought slowly and connected some things. After connecting the dots, she had a very bold guess. Could it be that the person behind the jade pendant wanted Sun Ying to replace her? Wanted Sun Ying to return to the Fu family? As soon as the thought appeared, Yi Qian immediately denied it. In this day and age, it was not possible to acknowledge one's ancestors with any kind of token. As for her, Big Brother had specially taken a strand of her hair for a test in her father's bedroom. To be on the safe side, he had even taken a toothbrush and sent it for a DNA test. It was impossible for someone to impersonate her. Yi Qian slapped her forehead. She felt that she was thinking too much. Then there must be another reason. What other reason could it be? It was better to investigate. As for visiting Sun Ying and doing so as a victor, he could consider it, but there was no need to go out of his way to visit her. Wasn't the court session tomorrow? He could just meet her tomorrow. A black car drove by the roadside. Someone rolled down the car window and cast a glance at Yi Qian, who was walking in the shade. The car passed by Yi Qian across the green belt, and the tinted window slowly rolled up again. Yi Qian looked up and could only see the black roof of the car reflected the sunlight. She could not even see the license plate number of the black car clearly because of the green belt. However, she knew that someone in the black car was looking at her with a look full of scrutiny. When they walked out of the Southern Province Public Security Bureau, the sun was already shining brightly, and a wave of heat hit them in the face. Yi Qian did not sweat much. After walking for more than 200 meters, she felt refreshed. Compared to the passers-by who were dripping with sweat, Yi Qian was so refreshed that there was not a single drop of sweat on her face or forehead. The sun shone through the leaves, and a few rays of sunlight shone on her face. Her skin was as delicate as white porcelain, clear and sparkling. It attracted the attention of a young woman who walked past her. After walking across the road and crossing the zebra crossing, Yi Qian saw a cafe behind the shade of a tree. She raised her head and glanced at the cafe. She stepped aside and stood behind a tree. Her gaze fell on a man in a suit on a hot day. "You've been following me for a few dozen meters. Is there anything I can help you with?" Chapter 2469. The man in the suit, who was originally 2 meters away from her, narrowed his eyes and walked up to Yi Qian. "Madam has something to tell Miss Yi. Please don't make things difficult for the people locked up in the bureau. If you're angry, you can rest assured. Miss Yi doesn't want anyone to have a good time. Madam also thinks the same. These are Madam's words. And this document, please sign it, Yi Qian." There were other documents to sign. Yi Qian didn't reach out to take it immediately. He looked at the man in the suit calmly and waited for an explanation. "It's not any other document. It's for tomorrow's court session. Madam knows that Miss Yi didn't hire a lawyer, so she hired one for Miss Yi. These documents are for accepting Sun Ying's apology." "Not bad." Madam Li was very thoughtful. Yi Qian took the document, opened it, and skimmed through it. In less than 2 minutes, he finished reading the 3-page document. Madam Li was very good at doing things. She only said that she accepted Sun Ying's apology, but didn't specify what she was apologizing for. This meant that she was giving Madam Li a chance to deal with Sun Ying in the future. With Madam Li's help, Yi Qian felt that he wouldn't have a chance to do anything. After reading it, Yi Qian signed his name. The man in the suit confirmed that there was no mistake. He bowed politely and said, "Madam Li also said that Miss Yi will be happy at tomorrow's court session since Miss Yi has signed it. Sorry to disturb you, goodbye." He then turned and left. Yi Qian looked at the man's back as he strode away. There was a hint of a smile in his eyes. Madam Li was really strong. She directly told him that she wanted Sun Ying to leave the court today. Ha! It seemed that he had to thank Madam Li for giving him advance notice. The reason why the domineering Madam Li had informed him in advance was probably because he was a military academy student. Mrs. Li had indeed taken into account the fact that Yi Jian was a military academy student. She thought for a while after answering the phone call and specially arranged for Li Chuhai to bring someone to inform Yi Jian. She had no choice. The Deputy Chief of Staff Du was being watched by the General Staff Department. As his wife, she had to avoid unnecessary trouble. Based on her previous way of doing things, why would she need to send someone to explain things to a mere cadet? Yi Qian walked out from behind the tree and returned to the roadside to wait. Xia Yiwei, who was eating cake, saw Yi Qian waiting at the traffic light to cross the road. She immediately said to Ho Zi, who was leisurely reading a business newspaper, "Xiao Yi, you're out. Why do you look so tired? Quick, go and help her cross the road. Take my umbrella, it's sunny outside." After saying that, he added, "It's not you, it's Xiao Yi." Ho Zi felt that there was no need to add anything. Moreover, he really couldn't tell what was wrong with Yi Qian's mental state. She was clearly doing very well and even had a smile on her face. But Xia Yiwei said that she was tired, so he accepted it. When Yi Qian saw that Ho Zi had specially come over to pick him up with a woman's pink floral umbrella, the corners of his mouth twitched a few times. She really wanted to laugh. The tall man had such a strong aura when he walked that even speeding cars would step on their brakes. Even though the traffic light was red, he still walked with a domineering aura that said, "This road is built by me." Yet, he still had to hold a pink floral umbrella. It was so out of place. Yi Jian held back her laughter. It was really funny. The boss of the underworld was holding a woman's umbrella, and it was a very small one. Along the way, he was not holding an umbrella, but carrying a big knife. It was a déjà vu. Chapter 2470. Don't laugh. Yiwei said you weren't feeling well, so she asked me to come and pick you up. She was the one who asked me to hold the umbrella. She said the sun is too strong, and it won't hurt your skin if you don't get too exposed to it. Ho Zi's expression was cold as he conveyed his wife's words seriously. It was obvious that he was helpless, and his forehead was tense. I know you want to laugh, but don't laugh. I've lived for decades, and this is the first time I'm holding an umbrella under the sun. Ho Zi passed the umbrella over and looked at Yi Qian again. You soldiers are afraid of the sun? What's there to be afraid of? He was the boss of the underworld, but now he was taught a lesson by Xia Yue. He would never dare to go east. Xia Yue couldn't stop laughing. It was also the first time she saw Ho Zi holding a woman's umbrella. You're still laughing? I've lost all my face. Ho Zi poured a glass of lemonade for her. Seeing that his wife was smiling to the point of tears in her eyes, his tense Jun Yen also relaxed. There was only endless indulgence. You drink some water. Xia Yue took the glass and lectured her husband. You. Xiao Yi knows to look at the light when crossing the road. What about you? It was clearly a red light, but you still rushed forward. Fortunately, it's noon and there aren't many cars. The driver could see you from afar and could step on the brakes. If you don't follow the traffic rules, our children will learn from you in the future. Aren't you worried? Ho Zi wanted to say, who dares to hit him? But when he heard the last sentence, he immediately realized his mistake. He nodded seriously and replied, that's true. There are so many cars nowadays. It's not impossible for someone to hit us. I have to take the lead. With Xia Yue around, Ho Zi didn't look like the boss of the underworld at all. He was full of life and was extremely handsome. Although he was 40 years old, he exuded the mature aura of a successful person. The young women at the next table glanced at him from time to time. Yi Qian had already noticed them. When he saw a young woman wearing tight red clothes with a low V-neck, revealing half of her fair and round breasts, Yi Qian's face darkened slightly. In an instant, his eyes were as sharp as a sword as he glanced at her. She was wearing a military uniform. Even though it was a student's uniform, she still exuded the aura of a soldier. The young woman was holding a cup of coffee and throwing flirtatious glances at Ho Zi. Unexpectedly, Ho Zi shot a murderous look at her. The young woman was so frightened that she let out an ah. The brown coffee spilled out of the cup and splashed onto her half-exposed breasts. The coffee spilled all over her chest and she looked extremely embarrassed. You! The young woman put the cup of coffee on the marble table and glared at Yi Qian. If the woman in the black dress hadn't stopped her in time, she probably would have rushed up. Ho Zi finally moved. He turned his head and glanced at the young woman indifferently. The young woman's arrogance instantly disappeared. She lowered her head in panic and took a tissue from her companion to dry the coffee on her chest. All right, take a break. Who do you think you are? A woman in her late 20s wearing a tight black dress with an exquisite figure scolded her girlfriend. She then apologized to Yi Qian. I'm sorry. My sister didn't do it on purpose. Sorry for offending you. Compared to Yi Qian, the woman in the black dress was more afraid of Ho Zi. They were all from the brothel and had a good eye for people. Although the woman in the military uniform looked at her coldly, it was only a warning. Chapter 2471. His temperament was extraordinary. With one look, one could tell that he was a man with a lot of money. He was not someone to be trifled with. His eyes swept over, cold and full of killing intent. That kind of high and mighty gaze swept over. The lives of these people were just ants in his eyes. He could easily kill them with a raise of his hand. She was apologizing, but Ho Zi didn't even look at her. He looked away indifferently and saw that Xia Yue had started eating dessert again. His cold expression changed drastically, and he instantly turned into a filial husband. Baby, the doctor said that you can't eat too much dessert. Be careful of gestational diabetes. You need to control your sugar intake. Can't be too high. You just ate a portion, so you can't eat more today. He coaxed and forced Xia Yue to take the dessert away. He was still worried, so he dipped the spoon into the cake. Xia Yue didn't even have a chance to speak before he finished the dessert in 2 bites. Yi Qian felt that he didn't have to be so calculative with the young woman at the next table. Their relationship was so good that no one could interfere. She was overthinking things. Xia Yue didn't like desserts in the past, but she didn't know why she started eating desserts after she got pregnant. Seeing that her favorite cake was in Ho Zi's stomach, she gritted her teeth and pinched Ho Zi's strong shoulders with her slender fingers. When I give birth, you'll gain at least 20 pounds. I'm giving you a heads up. I don't like fat men. You'd better maintain your figure. Yi Qian, who was sitting opposite her, picked up a business newspaper on the table and started reading. At this time, it wasn't convenient for her to disturb them. Pinch me when we get home. I'll have my fill when we get home. Ho Zi was more than willing. He even put his arm around his wife's shoulders and kissed Xia Yue's cheek gently and attentively. Xiao Yi won't be coming home with us later. Let's talk business first. Xia Yue removed the strong arm from her shoulder and smiled at Yi Qian, who was reading the newspaper. Your brother Z can control himself, but I can't. You don't have to worry about me. She pushed the untouched dessert in front of Yi Qian, who had placed the newspaper on the table. Have some dessert to fill your tummy first. We'll go for dinner later. Let's talk while we eat. It took less than half an hour for Yi Qian to meet Yi Zhifan. It was almost 12 o'clock now, just in time for lunch. After eating a small plate of desserts, Ho Zi helped Xia Yue up. His actions were so gentle that it was as if his wife was a fragile porcelain doll. Get up slowly. Be careful not to bump your stomach. The floor is a little slippery. Next time, if I don't accompany you, you're not allowed to come here alone. His domineering tone left no room for doubt, but it was comfortable to listen to. Did you see that? He treasures his wife so much. You never learn from your mistakes. Do you think that every man will stare at your breasts and climb into your bed? When they reached the door, Yi Qian heard the woman in the black dress lecturing the woman in the red dress. Out of the 4 people at the table, the woman in the red dress was the most unruly. She was also the prettiest, but she was also the most impudent. Who knew that he wouldn't know how to behave? He's so blind. Shut up. Don't get yourself killed without even knowing it. The door to the coffee shop closed, cutting off the woman in the black dress voice. Yi Qian didn't know if Ho Zi heard it, but seeing that the couple didn't take it to heart, she forgot about it. When they reached the private room of the restaurant and Ho Zi left, Xia Yue smiled at Yi Qian. What happened at the coffee shop used to happen a lot. Ho Zi also knows how to behave, but now he knows how to restrain himself. He's scared. He also knows that I can still survive without him, so he doesn't dare to do it anymore. Chapter 2472. Yi Qian was pouring water when she heard that. Her hands paused and the water stopped flowing. He probably went out to reflect on himself. When the dishes are served, don't call him. We'll eat on our own, Xia Yue said calmly. There was no haze between her eyebrows, only tenderness. A prodigal son was more precious than gold. Sister Yue had waited for her lover to come back. Although those things in the past hurt her, she still had a long life ahead of her. 20 years of feelings could not be let go so easily. The man she loved still loved her deeply. Let bygones be bygones. Yi Qian could more or less understand Xia Yue's thoughts, but when it came to her, ha ha ha, she smirked and filled a glass with water. When she passed it to her, she replied softly, I can't do it. Some things hurt and can't be forgiven. Yes, I know your personality. So now that you're in a relationship with sixth brother, no matter how much he flirts with you, you have to protect yourself. Don't let him get to you so easily. Men are all the same. They don't know how to cherish the moment they get what they want too early. Xia Yue said gently. She was like a big sister telling Yi Qian intimate words. Yi Qian had never been taught these words in her 2 lifetimes. Hearing that, she nodded. Thank you, Sister Yue. I'll remember it. Don't tell sixth brother. Xia Yue winked playfully. She had the maturity of a woman and the playfulness of a young girl. Her bright and beautiful face glowed with happiness. She saw Yi Qian's stubbornness, so she wanted to remind her. She believed in sixth brother's character, but there were too many uncertainties in life. Some things were clearly within your control, but there were bound to be some deviations. Yi Jian was a good girl with an unyielding character. However, such a girl happened to have a fatal flaw, which was that she would never nod her head easily. If sixth brother really did something wrong to her, she would not choose to forgive him. She would definitely leave and not give sixth brother a chance to start over. The more determined she was, the greater the pain in her heart. She did not wish for this to happen. Men with family Xia were very loyal before and after marriage. Everyone in their family was in a high position. None of them were involved in any scandals. Sixth brother was a little reckless, so it was better to play it safe. When Xia Jinyuan found out later, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Not only did he have a father who was a burden, but he also had a sister who was a burden. Ho Zi came back after about 10 minutes. There was still a faint smell of cigarettes on his body. There were some things that his lover did not care about, but he felt extremely guilty every time he thought about it. With a private room, no one would disturb them. Yi Jian told Ho Zi about some of Yi Jifan's affairs. Ho Zi couldn't help with other things, but she could ask someone to keep an eye on Madame Li and see what she would do. There's no point in specially visiting a defeated opponent in prison. He wants you to see Sun Ying because he wants to make the conflict between you and Sun Ying worse, so that he can achieve his goal. I won't go. The court will be held tomorrow afternoon. I'll just listen. Madame Li made a big move in the southern province 2 months ago. After she came back to the capital, she did not do anything. Now, her brother, Li Chuhai, is in charge of the southern province. He's a ruthless businessman who doesn't like to share the profits with others. Chapter 2473. When Ho Zi talked about the Li family, she added, I heard that Li Chuhai used to be a soldier. I've met him twice, and I can see that he still has the demeanor of a soldier. His posture is different from others, and it's a little similar to you and sixth brother. When he and Yi Qian talked about serious matters, Xia Yue would occasionally add, Madame Li probably won't come to the court session tomorrow. Not necessarily. It's also unknown whether the court session will go smoothly tomorrow. Ho Zi smiled and shook his head. Xiao Yi just said that Sun Ying reported Yi Jifan because she had a deal with Madame Li. Yi Qian took a sip of his new tea and smiled. She won't come. I met someone sent by Madame Li at the coffee shop. He told me very politely about what Madame Li wanted to do next. After he told the couple what the man in the suit said, he sighed. I didn't think that Madame Li would be so polite to a little military academy student like me. Xia Yue's face turned cold when she heard this. Then she mocked. Madame Li has always been domineering in the capital. Not many families are worthy of her attention. Even if she sent someone over, it must be because she had no choice. Who knows, maybe he's still angry. It was unknown whether she was angry or not. But Yi Qian knew that Madame Li remembered him. Not wanting to affect Xia Yue's mood, Yi Qian smiled and said, At least she gave me a heads up. It made me feel better. Xiao Yi is right. At least she gave me a heads up. Sun Ying wanted Madame Li to make a deal with Xiao Yi and not let Sun Ying be sentenced. But Ho Zi looked at Yi Qian and said slowly, Since Madame Li said that she doesn't want Sun Ying to have an easy time, then you can let her handle Sun Ying. You can let her handle it. Yi Qian smiled and nodded. I've always thought so. The southern province notified me so late and said that the court session would start tomorrow. I didn't even have the chance to hire a lawyer. If something so illegal happened to me, it's clear that Madame Li and the southern province have already arranged for me to lose. Now that she's informed me, let's do as she wishes. Madame Li, I don't want to face her for the time being. Let's wait and see. Yi Qian had thought things through, so she was not worried at all when Madame Li wanted to bail Sun Ying out. After talking so much with Yi Jifan, the only thing he was interested in was the letter that the person behind the jade pendant had written to Yi Jifan. Her indifference made Ho Zi secretly nod his head. When they returned home, he sighed to Xia Yue. Xiao Yi, when I was her age, I really didn't have her temperament or her temperament. The surface of the water is calm, but the depths of the water are unfathomable. Sometimes I have to think twice before I speak to her. Xia Yue laughed for a long time. She lay in his arms and said lazily, That's why I have to watch over little Yi for sixth brother. We can't let sixth brother ruin such a good girl. She was ruined by sixth brother. Ho Zi changed the topic. There was no way he could continue the conversation. To him, sixth brother was more than enough for Yi Qian. He was talented, good-looking, responsible, and had a rare EQ. How could he ruin Yi Qian? She didn't want to say it at first, but seeing that they were both men, Houzi said, "You're sixth brother's sister after all, and he has a good relationship with you. Don't drag him down, okay?" Chapter 2474. Sixth brother told me that for such an outstanding girl like Yi Qian to join the masculine army, it would be like falling into a wolf's den, surrounded by hungry wolves. For the sake of his lifelong happiness, he's always thinking about how to take Yi Qian in. He's your younger brother, and you're his older sister. Since you want the two of you to be happy, then don't get involved. Understand? With that, Houzi hugged his wife a little tighter, lowered his head, and kissed his wife's forehead. Sixth brother is different from me. Even though he's young, he's much more mature than I was when I was 27. He's very responsible, and he won't do anything to hurt little Yi. You, don't put old sixth in the circle of people like us. He's a soldier, and he's born different from hooligans like me. Xia Yiwei remained silent. It's too late, it's too late. I've already said it. Afternoon nap, afternoon nap. I'm so sleepy. Tomorrow you can go with little Yi. I won't go. Xia Yiwei felt a little guilty, so she closed her eyes and refused to continue the conversation. Houzi studied the letter for a while, then narrowed his eyes slightly. It seemed she had said something unfavorable to Yi Qian, and he didn't know if sixth brother could get in touch with him. He had to let him know. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the glaring rays made it hard for people to open their eyes. Without an umbrella, Yi Qian pushed open the bank door, walked out of the bank about 10 minutes later, and quickly left in a car. Back at the Caesar Hotel, Yi Jian opened the yellowed envelope. The letter paper was an ordinary letter paper with one thin and one thick red horizontal stripe. The person who wrote the letter must have deliberately used his left hand to write it, or perhaps he had hired someone to write it. The handwriting was crooked, and the wrong words were corrected with a fountain pen. It was indeed the original. Yi Zhifan didn't lie to her. There wasn't much in the letter, but it was just as Yi Zhifan had said. The person behind the jade pendant wanted to make him useless. He also asked Yi Zhifan to hide the jade pendant in advance and not let anyone know about it. It will turn you from a village official to a high-ranking official. In order to emphasize the importance of this sentence, there were two underlined words at the bottom. Yi Qian's gaze fell on the double-dashed line. It was drawn very straight, and it was drawn in one stroke. The two lines were of the same length, and it was so flat that it seemed like it had been calculated. From this, it could be seen that the person who wrote this letter had a certain degree of obsessive-compulsive disorder. She had no way of knowing who wrote the letter, but the double underline must have been written by the person behind the scenes. There weren't many words. Only half of the letter was written, but to Yi Zhifan, just the sentence, "It will make you a high-ranking official from a village official," was enough to tempt him. After so many years, he had not just changed from a village official to a high-ranking official. Carefully putting away the yellowed letter, Yi Qian called Principal Chun, who was the instructor at the Southern Province sniper base. Principal Chun didn't know that she had returned to Southern Province. When he heard that she was at the Caesar Hotel, Principal Chun immediately said, "I'll take a car now. Wait for me at the hotel." Yi Qian didn't want him to rush back and forth. She smiled and said, "Uncle Chun, you should rest well. Sun Ying's court date is tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it." With Mrs. Li's interference and the delay in informing her of the court date, it was obvious that she would see Sun Ying's smug face at the court tomorrow. If she hadn't promised Uncle Chun that Yi Zhifan's family had to report to him in detail, she wouldn't have told Uncle Chun about her return to Southern Province. Chapter 2475. How could Principal Chun be at ease with Yi Qian? To him, Yi Zhifan's family wouldn't settle down even if they were in jail. They might still have some tricks up their sleeves. "Wait for me at the hotel. Chief Kai came over last time and brought some things your mother used in the army. There's also an old-fashioned military uniform that your mother used to wear. I'll bring it over for you." Yi Qian couldn't refuse Principal Chen's request. Her closest kin always knew where her weakness was, and she wasn't afraid that they would find out, because they would never use her soft spot to hurt her. Principal Chen arrived at the hotel at 5 in the afternoon. When he entered the hotel, he asked Yi Qian to tell him about his meeting with Yi Zhifan today and what they had talked about. Meanwhile, in a 15-story building in the Southern Province Science Park, Li Chuhai called Madame Li, who was far away in the capital. "You've already told her, haven't you? Just tell her." Madame Li was preparing dessert for dinner. She rarely cooked, but today's guests were different, so she had to put in some effort. She held the phone in one hand and took out some butter from the fridge to put on the counter. Li Chuhai rubbed his brows. He didn't think Madame Li's relaxed tone was good. "Sis, Yi Zhifan will definitely say something bad about Sun Ying when he sees Yi Qian. Why aren't you worried at all? In my opinion, they shouldn't have met in the first place." "So what if they meet? What's the problem?" Madame Li's brows relaxed. She smiled disapprovingly. "Don't worry, nothing will happen. At this time, everyone who used to know Yi Zhifan is avoiding him like the plague. As far as I know, no one has gone to visit him. Her family has done so many things to hurt Yi Qian, but Yi Qian really went over. This shows that this girl still cares about family ties." Madame Li had already investigated Yi Qian and Yi Zhifan's relationship. That was why she said this. "Why does it sound like you're admiring Yi Qian now?" "How could I admire someone from the Yi family?" Madame Li laughed softly as if she had heard a joke. "This Yi Qian. Her memory was not very good at her age. When the results of the investigation came out, she did not remember for a while. It was only after old Du reminded her that she remembered. A face flashed across her mind. Only then did she remember that it was the military academy student who had argued with Sun Ying previously. That girl was quite well-proportioned and had a good temperament. It was just that her gaze was too headstrong and did not seem docile. She lacked the gentleness that a woman should have. She was also a girl who was not afraid of trouble and could stand on her own 2 feet. Madame Li's impression of Yi Qian was neither good nor bad. It was just so. She went to take a look. She was just a little girl. It was said that he had lost his parents and relied on the army to support him. In the end, he was admitted to the military academy. She was a girl who had her own opinions. She didn't have a good relationship with Yi Zhifan's family, so it wasn't a big deal to meet her. If she didn't go to see Yi Zhifan, I wouldn't be able to send her a message. That's right. Did your subordinate say anything else after she heard what I said? Or did she have any expression of displeasure? The servant who worked in Madame Li's house came in and saw that her mistress was on the phone, so she quietly left the kitchen. There were many rules in the Li family, and all the servants knew them. When she left the kitchen, she closed the sliding door so that the servants in the living room could not hear them. Chapter 2476. Li Chuhai, who was sitting in the office, stood up and pulled open the blinds of the floor-to-ceiling window to look down at the evening scenery of the city. The sun was gradually setting in the west, leaving behind a resplendent sunset glow that was as gorgeous as silk and as in full swing. Not really. She accepted it quite calmly. Li Chuhai looked at the beautiful scenery on the horizon and smirked. He sighed. "Sis, Sun Ying and Yi Qian have a grudge against each other. In order to be released, Sun Ying reported Yi Zhifan. Yi Zhifan cut off all ties with Sun Ying because he didn't want to be dragged down by his daughter. Now that Sun Ying reported him, how could Yi Zhifan, who is greedy for power, be willing to let it go? You know that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Sis, tomorrow is mainly a matter between Sun Ying and Yi Qian. You want to bail Sun Ying out, but what if Yi Qian doesn't agree? What if he doesn't give you face?" Mrs. Li laughed when she heard this. "Chuhai, you've been abroad for more than 10 years and haven't come back. You probably don't know much about domestic matters. Don't worry. Since I dared to promise Sun Ying, I have the ability to get her out. I'm also sure that Yi Qian will agree because she's a smart girl. She knows how to let go. The things that Sun Ying did are just small things. She already paid the price for it and can't take the college entrance exam for a few years. Things like hiring someone to kill someone or being an accomplice. These are not big things. I've already investigated. The so-called hiring someone to kill someone or being an accomplice was done by a high school classmate of hers named Yao Jing. Sun Ying didn't participate. As for the other things, they didn't cause any substantial harm. They only damaged Yi Qian's reputation. Purposely fabricating and spreading false facts is a crime of defamation. Eliminating the impact, restoring the reputation, and apologizing. These are all small things to Sun Ying. She won't be sentenced. As for being sent to the military has already issued the punishment. The fine and imprisonment have already been completed. That's not a big deal. Mrs. Li, who was in a good mood, explained everything clearly. She didn't want to talk about these things. She said to her brother happily, "Mrs. Qin is here today. I have to treat her well." "Congratulations, this is a good thing." The smile on Li Chuhai's face deepened. The Du family's foundation was still too shallow, and it would be a good thing if they could become in-laws with the Qin family. This was a good thing for the Du family and the Li family. Seeing that it was getting late, Mrs. Li did not want to say more. She said, "Sun Ying will be fine." Then she hung up the phone. Li Chuhai, who was looking at the scenery in the distance, put his phone back into his pocket and crossed his arms in front of his chest. The smile on his face gradually disappeared as he stood there quietly. As the sun gradually faded, there seemed to be a hint of darkness in his eyes. He hadn't been in the country for a long time, so he didn't really understand. Some people and some things were a little out of his control. He had to find an opportunity to sort them out slowly. Those disobedient people, those useless people, and those old and rotten things, all of them had to be cleaned up. He stood there until the sun set in the west. The dark night stretched across the horizon. Li Chuhai, who was like a statue, finally moved. He took out his phone and dialed a number. "Arrange something for me. I want to see someone." On the other hand, Yi Qian said something similar to Principal Chun. "There are many things that Sun Ying can't commit a substantial crime. Even if I hire a lawyer now, it won't be of much use. Plus, she has Mrs. Li behind her. I really don't need a lawyer." Chapter 2477. If she really wanted to hire a lawyer, Xia Yue and Ho Zi would remind her. Commander-in-Chief Xia would also probably call to ask about it. The last time she left Beijing, the Commander-in-Chief said that he would keep an eye on the situation in the southern province. He would probably know about the court hearing tomorrow. Principal Chun didn't really care about what was going on outside. When he heard this, he nodded slightly with a cold expression. That's fine. Although Sun Ying's actions were indeed outrageous, compared to what Yi Zhifan and old Madame Yi did, what she did was a small crime. A light punishment is enough. She's so young, but she's so vicious. You didn't take the initiative to harm her, but she still chased after you to harm you. If you weren't vigilant, how could you have avoided her dirty tricks? Teach her a lesson so that she won't run amok in the future. After all, Principal Chen used to be a principal and had high moral standards. No matter how vicious Sun Ying was, to him, she was still a student who needed to be disciplined and taught a lesson. Now that she had been locked up in jail for a few months, Principal Chen felt that this was the punishment that Sun Ying deserved. As for making Sun Ying beg for death, Principal Chen never thought about it. He didn't know that Yi Qian was killed by Sun Ying in his previous life. Naturally, he didn't know how much Yi Qian hated her. If a girl didn't take the right path, it was mostly because of her family. In the end, the responsibility of an adult was still greater. In the past, when Sun Dongxing caused trouble at school, when was it not unreasonable? When was it not a role model for Sun Ying? Therefore, in Principal Chen's eyes, Sun Ying's punishment was about enough. He couldn't bear to put a young girl to death. Seeing that Yi Qian didn't go into a dead end, he smiled and said with relief, "Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. Yi Zhifan's sins are his own, so let him pay for them." As for Sun Ying's side, since Madame Li is involved, then you don't have to worry too much. Besides, Principal Chen thought of what Yi Qian had just said. He shook his head in pity. She made the wife of a deputy chief of staff lose so much face. And you said that Madame Li is not a magnanimous lady. Even if Sun Ying is released, I'm afraid her life will not be easy. Unfortunately, Sun Ying was a very good student in junior high. Her grades were good, and she was good at singing and dancing. Why did she become worse as she grew older? At such a young age, she already knew how to scheme against Yi Qian. Sigh, what a pity that such a good child was ruined just like that. Being dismissed by the army was a stain on her record. Her life was over. Yi Qian had always thought the same as Principal Qin. Sun Ying had offended Madame Li and was sent back to her hometown by the army. Her life was indeed ruined. She wanted to marry into a noble family like she had in her previous life and become a real golden phoenix. She could forget about it in this life. She originally wanted to settle the score with Sun Ying, then slowly wait for the military and the disciplinary committee to settle the score with Yi Zhifan. Who knew that the plot would take a turn and settle the score with Yi Zhifan first? Either way, it was the result she wanted to see. The next day, the court session was held at 2 in the afternoon. Yi Zhifan and Sun Dongxing were both escorted to the court by the bailiffs. As Sun Ying's parents, they were allowed to attend the court session. However, they were both prisoners. Even if they were there, they could only wear prisoners' uniforms and enter the court with handcuffs. Sun Ying, who was locked up in the detention room, felt that the day passed by exceptionally slowly. She didn't know how many times she paced back and forth in the small, smelly room, but it wasn't even 2 in the afternoon. Chapter 2478. Every day here felt like a year to her. Every minute and every second here was torture, but today, Madame Li said she could leave. She had been looking forward to it, and this day had finally arrived. The more anxious she was, the slower time passed. Tired from walking, Sun Ying sat down against the cold wall and stared blankly at it. She had waited for too long, and it had exhausted her vitality and her patience. But she couldn't make any noise, or the consequences would be even worse. 2 o'clock. Everything would be fine after 2 o'clock. After 2 o'clock, she would be free. She had to wait patiently. At 12 o'clock, someone finally arrived. It was the police who were escorting Sun Ying to the court. Sun Ying. A cold and serious voice rang out, announcing Sun Ying's name, place of birth, and ID number. The court and the police exchanged documents, and all the procedures were completed. The metal door opened with a clang, and Sun Ying walked out of the narrow room that had almost driven her crazy. When she finally walked out into the sunlight, she couldn't help but laugh. It was a low, soft, and particularly gloomy laugh. The staff escorting her to the court didn't find it strange. They had seen it many times and were used to it. However, Sun Ying didn't know that what awaited her was not a good thing. Even if she could regain her freedom today, Madame Li's arrangement was enough to make her a villain that everyone hated. At around 1:40, Yi Qian walked into the court accompanied by Hou Zi and Principal Chun. Walking past the second courtroom, Yi Qian saw dozens of people sitting in the audience. She understood what the man in the suit meant when he said, "Madame will make Miss Yi happy tomorrow." There were a lot of people. There were at least 30 people. Sitting in the audience were not just anyone. Many of her classmates from middle school and high school, and there were also villagers from Shuka village. Among them, the famous gossipy Aunt Yu and Aunt Qiu were all there. Everyone in the audience turned their heads, and their eyes fell on Yi Qian, who pushed the door open. These students were all junior high school students. After graduating from high school, they had never seen Yi Qian again, especially junior high school students. Other than Anjusin and a male student whom they met during training, no one else had seen Yi Qian. Now that they saw Yi Qian in his military uniform, the junior high school students were all shocked by the military might emanating from Yi Qian. This Yi Qian was too unfamiliar to them. Some of the students could not believe that the cadet walking over was Yi Qian. "Oh my God, is this Yi Qian? Why, doesn't seem like it at all. Really so handsome, so energetic." She had changed. She was no longer like Yi Jian. Oh my God, why did he change so much? In their memories, Yi Qian was a skinny, small, soft-spoken, slow-walking Yi Qian. He did everything half-heartedly and walked with his head lowered all year round. Although he suddenly changed in the second half of the second year of junior high school, he left a deep impression on them. So much so that after 4 years of not seeing him, The one they remembered the most was still Yi Qian, who was subservient to Sun Ying. In most people's memories, Yi Qian was still the same. That's right, it's Yi Qian. Look at her face and her eyes. She looks just like she did in the 3rd year of junior high school. Back then, she was prettier than Ying. Oh, Sun Ying. Hasn't she graduated 4 years ago? She must be even prettier than before. Chapter 2479. She's not just pretty. Look at how tall she's grown. She's already 1.7 meters tall. She was so short and skinny back then. I was afraid that she would be blown away if the wind blew. Look at Yi Qian now. Yi Qian has changed the most in our class. Usually, when I walk on the street, even if I recognize him, I don't dare to go up and greet him. She felt a little awkward, a little embarrassed, and a little afraid. After all, other than a few students with good grades who didn't really bully Yi Qian back then, the other students who liked to play and quarrel had more or less bullied him. Especially the girls who shared the same dormitory as Yi Qian. In fact, they all knew that Teacher Ku had purposely arranged for all the girls who liked to bully Yi Qian to stay there. The few of them had seen it before, so they probably felt even worse. The girl who spoke was a little emotional and a little jealous. Her words were also acknowledged by the students beside her. Wasn't that right? If they met Yi Qian on the street, they wouldn't dare to recognize him because they were afraid that they would mistake him for someone else. The current Yi Qian was no longer the same as before. His eyebrows were sharp, his eyes were like stars, and below his beautiful nose were petal-like lips. She pursed her lips slightly and looked serious. Even the look in her eyes changed. Although her facial features were exquisite, there was a sense of intimidating majesty. She looked like Yi Jian in every way, but at the same time she didn't. Confident and reserved. Compared to when he was in junior high, Yi Qian had changed too much. It was as if he was a different person. On the other side, the audience was also talking. It was Aunt Yu's voice. Little Yi. Oh, it's really little Yi. Uncle, look, little Yi is here. Amazing, amazing. Little Yi came out in her military uniform. Why is she so handsome? She's so energetic. Oh, we're sitting in the wrong seat. We should be sitting by the door. We can't even talk to her sitting here. What's the rush? She'll definitely come. Little Yi looked in our direction just now. What's the rush? Wait. Hey, look beside her. Isn't that Town Middle School's Principal Chun? Why is he here too? Aren't you talking nonsense? Principal Chun was raised by Uncle General. Why can't he come? There's a man beside little Yi. Who is he? I've never seen him before. He was talking about Ho Zi. Ho Zi looked at the huge lineup of people in the audience. When she saw a girl stand up, she smiled at Yi Qian and said, I'll come in later. You guys go ahead and catch up. The person who stood up and walked over was Zhang Na, who had a good relationship with Yi Qian during middle school. She was sitting in the last row, so she was the first to speak. It's been 4 years since we last met. I didn't expect that we would meet in a place like this. Yi Qian, it's been a while. It was different if they had a good relationship. Although they were a little distant, at least they weren't stiff. The moment Zhang Na opened her mouth, the junior high school classmates sitting around her all started talking. Yi Qian, Yi Qian. Yi Qian, it's me, Tan Wei. Do you still remember me? Tan Wei remembered. They were in the same dormitory in middle school. Back then, when Sun Ying instigated He Jimin to bully her, Tan Wei would step out to defend her. Yi Qian, who had just finished hugging Zhang Na, smiled and said, I know you. We were in the same dormitory. Yes, yes, yes. I didn't expect you to remember. Tan Wei smiled. She didn't get into university or high school. She studied vocational school and worked in a factory in the southern province. After entering society for a year, she had the maturity and sophistication of an adult. She even nudged a girl beside her. This is He Jimin. She came with me. We're working in the same factory now. Do you still know He Jimin? Chapter 2480. He Jimin, who was sitting with her head down, didn't dare to face Yi Qian, especially Yi Qian in his military uniform. She was caught off guard by Tan Wei's sudden appearance, and a trace of panic flashed across her eyes. The other students couldn't help but quieten down. Their gazes shifted from Yi Qian to He Jimin. Everyone's expression changed slightly, and they all had different thoughts. He Jimin, of course they knew each other. Yi Qian definitely knew her as well, and there were too many bad memories in their acquaintance. She didn't know if Yi Qian would give her a hard time. In the past, He Jimin often gave Yi Qian a hard time, and even helped Sun Ying to make things difficult for Yi Qian. The atmosphere suddenly became a little tense. Some students even held their breaths. If Yi Qian really wanted to make things difficult for He Jimin, it was reasonable. Under the gaze of the students, Yi Qian, whose expression didn't change, smiled and nodded. Long time no see. Good, long time no see. Yi Qian. Compared to Tan Wei, He Jimin was much more restrained. Her tone was even more nervous. How could she not be nervous? In the past, in order to help Sun Ying in class, she would bully Yi Qian from time to time. She would get water for her, do the laundry, and make Yi Qian do all the cleaning for her. In the past, she bullied him so much that she didn't have the face to face Yi Qian now. If Tan Wei hadn't persuaded her, she really wouldn't have dared to come. But Tan Wei also said that there was a world of difference between them and Yi Qian. While there was still a chance to mend their relationship, it was better to do it as soon as possible. After thinking about it for 2 nights, she finally made up her mind and agreed. She was so nervous and uneasy. It wasn't until Yi Qian smiled at her that He Jimin's tense heart finally relaxed. Don't bully the young for being poor. Now she finally understood the true meaning of this sentence. When Yi Qian was young, he was so self-abased that he was almost cowardly. But when she was young, she was arrogant and confident, as if she would really become someone great in the future. For years had passed, and the monotonous factory life had long worn away her arrogance. Now she only lived for the sake of survival. Yi Qian, who she looked down on, became the brightest star, shining so brightly that she felt ashamed of her own inferiority. Yi Qian looked at her and knew why she was so nervous. He smiled and asked, "Where's Xie Sifeng? I remember that you guys where she is right now." Yi Qian's evens hearts, who knows how to be considerate. To be remembered, thanked S was some girls secretly rejoiced. The boys, on the other hand, were thinking about something else entirely. They thought that Yi Jian was capable now and still remembered her classmates. She was quite affectionate. Sifeng is working at an electronics factory in the coastal area. She hasn't come back yet. Tan Wei replied with a smile. His eyes kept glancing at Yi Qian, full of envy. "Yi Qian, you're the most promising in our class. You're the top scorer in the college entrance exam. Back then, the town went crazy for you. I heard from my brother that our town's middle school even hung a banner at school. Life was truly unpredictable. Who would have thought that Yi Qian, who used to be last in class, would become the most promising student in town? A military academy student, Fujian town's the town's pride. It was said that the town's mayor had accompanied the city's education bureau to Shuku village to award a scholarship to Yi Qian, but they couldn't find Yi Qian and didn't know where she went. Chapter 2481. Tan Wei's envy was also the envy of his junior high classmates. Who would have thought that Yi Qian, who was bullied by Sun Ying and scolded by Mr. Ku every day, would become so successful? Back in the day, Mr. Ku even pointed at Yi Qian's nose and scolded him. "Look at you! You're just a waste of society's resources. If you grow up to be successful, I'll twist my head off and let you kick it like a ball." Now that Yi Jian was so successful, she didn't know how teacher Dao Ke would feel when he saw her. She guessed that he would be scared. 8 girls and 5 boys from his junior high class came. Among them, Zhou Liao was studying at Southern Province University. The girls, Zhang Na and Zhang Wenjin, were also in college. The rest were already in society. Yi Qian could name them accurately. Although she missed Yi Qian as a junior high student, she didn't hate him. However, it would be difficult for her to forget what Xie Sifeng and He Jimin had done to her. She didn't want to talk about being classmates. She wanted to keep a certain distance. She was familiar with her senior high classmates, but there were also a few unfamiliar faces. After asking around, she realized that they were Sun Ying's former senior high classmates. "Hello, Yiqian. Were ye Sun Ying's sophomore and junior high classmates? Nice to meet you. We're not senior high classmates. We used to be in the same dance class. We were in the same English class as her. She was in Sun Ying's piano class. We used to hang out together during the summer vacation." Although they had never met Yiqian, they had more or less heard about Yiqian from Sun Ying. They knew that Sun Ying had an ungrateful cousin who always made things difficult for Sun Ying. They also knew that Sun Ying's cousin only got into high school by cheating. They had never met Yiqian, but they all thought that Yiqian was a hypocrite. Sometimes when they went out together, he would come up with ideas for Sun Ying. Now that they thought about it, they were all deceived by Sun Ying. If someone hadn't asked them to come over, they wouldn't have known that they were so stupid. After listening to their introductions and looking at the lineup, Yiqian was even more certain that Madame Li was worried that she would mention today's incident to the military and make things difficult for the deputy chief of staff. Therefore, he tried his best to handle things as perfectly as possible so that she would feel better. She really didn't expect Mrs. Li to be able to gather all her high school and junior high school classmates together. She even invited the villagers of Shuka village. In order to shut her up, Madame Li had put in a lot of effort. The second courtroom was very big. The auditorium would be in the middle with 3 large sections on the left and right. The high school and junior high school students would be on the left, while the villagers would be on the right. The villagers had already noticed Yiqian entering the courtroom, but they had been reminded not to walk around freely in the courtroom. Therefore, they only watched as the group of young people surrounded Yiqian and talked to her. They did not let her in. "Those youngsters are really ignorant. We're from the same village and haven't even talked to her yet." "That's enough, big mouth you. Stop talking," Village Chief Zhang Difu said in a low voice. The few people from the village had been brought over in a car. They said that the court had asked the village to choose a few representatives to attend Yi Jifan's court hearing. They had specially chosen Big Mouth Yu and Big Mouth Chiu. The rest would be chosen by him as the village chief. Yi Jifan was a high-ranking official from the village. Now that his wife and daughter had reported him as a prisoner, he had become the joke of the entire Fujian town. When he saw that the court had specially sent a car over, he didn't think much of it and entered the provincial capital together. Chapter 2482. Zhang Difu didn't feel too good about the current situation. They were from the same village and they were uncle and nephew. In the end, they became enemies that couldn't be untied. Sigh. The Yi family was disbanded. The village chief's face darkened. "Aunt, you didn't say anything more." She pursed her lips and turned her head away angrily. She didn't say anything wrong, so why couldn't she say anything? But after a while, Aunt Yu's gloomy face immediately brightened up. She heard Yi Qian's voice. It was refreshing, as if she had eaten a slice of iced watermelon on a hot day. Her whole body felt comfortable. Yi Qian was greeting the village chief, Zhang Difu. He was polite and familiar with the villagers. Zhang Difu was very pleased to hear this. "It's not that hard. It's just that I'm getting old and riding the car is too torturous." Zhang Difu looked at Yi Qian. It was also his first time seeing Yi Qian in his military uniform. He was spirited, very spirited. He wanted to raise his hand to pat her on the shoulder, but he retracted it after reaching out his hand. The Yi girl in front of him wasn't the Yi girl of the past. How could he casually pat her on the shoulder? "You're very good like this. You've won glory for our village." Good, very good. Life was a little bitter, but after the bitterness came the sweetness. Aunt Yu squeezed over and said to Yi Qian in a loud and clear voice, "Yi girl, Auntie is here to see you. Don't worry, Auntie will definitely stand by you. That little wench Sun Ying has been scheming since she was young. She always bullied you. Now that she's in court, we have to teach her a lesson. You have to make her bow and apologize to you. Our entire village is watching and supporting you. You're quite good with words." Big Mouth Chiu, who was pushed aside, rolled his eyes at her. His fat body squeezed over and pushed Aunt Yu to the side of the stage. He smiled and said, "Yi girl, don't be afraid. Auntie is here to support you." We really didn't know that Sun Ying had done so many bad things behind our backs. This time, we won't let her off. When Li even specially asked me to speak up for you in court. She wanted me to tell the judge about how that little bitch Sun Ying bullied you. Don't be afraid. Everyone in our village is here to support you. They were the two women who had come to the village. When the other villagers heard this, their faces burned. Women just don't know anything. He even had her back. Stop talking so much. Yi Qian accepted each and every one of them with a smile. No matter when it came to flattering the strong and stepping on the weak, it was not like she had not experienced it before. She also knew that Auntie Chiu was just being polite. When Li was a college student, so how could she say things like, "I'll speak up for you in court"? The testimonies and evidence were all prepared in advance, and the witnesses would also be announced. How could they speak one after another in a solemn court like a market? She understood the meaning behind Auntie Chiu's words. They were not malicious and were just human nature. She understood it in her heart, so there was no need to say it out loud to save some face for the elders. After greeting the other villagers, Village Chief Zhang Difu said sternly, "Sit down, everyone. It's almost time. Let Yi Qian sit in the front. If you have anything to say, it won't be too late to say it later." After all, the village chief was different. He was more knowledgeable. Taking note of the time, he saw that there were still 10 minutes before the start of the court session. So he stepped forward to stop the villagers from continuing to chat with Yi Qian. He did not say anything too definite. They could chat after the end of the court session. He also wanted to chat with Yi Qian. Yi Qian politely said a few more words before returning to her seat. Chapter 2483. In her previous life, Shuka village had left her with too many bad memories. Even the village chief had made things difficult for her in order to cater to Yi Jifan's family, because she wanted to get a certificate and then go to the police station to get her ID card. All the village leaders said, "Your ID card is at your uncle's house. Why do you need a certificate? You don't need one. Just go get it from your uncle." That made sense. No one was willing to speak up for her. She still remembered what had happened in her previous life. Those villagers who had made things difficult for her and hurt her, she could ignore them in this life, but she could not truly accept them. She was not a saint. She was not so open-minded. She chose to keep a certain distance from them. That was her choice. Just as she sat in the audience, the heavy wooden door of the court opened. Yi Jifan was escorted out by two bailiffs. There was a wave of sighs from the audience, as well as a buzz of discussion. Yi Jifan, who had walked out, did not expect the scene to be so big. When his gaze swept across the audience, Yi Jifan was so embarrassed that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. It was better than walking in front of everyone and being humiliated by their gazes. "I know him. He's Sun Ying's father." When Sun Ying came to school, her father would often drive a small car to school to pick her up. Yes. I've seen him before. He was so impressive back then. Even the teachers in our training class had to bow down to him. Isn't that so? Sun Ying was also impressive back then. She looked down on others just because her father was an official. The first to speak were Sun Ying's former classmates. They did not spend much time with Sun Ying, so they did not have much camaraderie with her. It was inevitable that their words would be much harsher. The high school and middle school students had mixed feelings, especially the middle school students. The mayor, that was the highest-ranking official in Fujian town. Back then, because Sun Ying had a mayor as her father, the teachers in school treated her exceptionally well. Teacher Ku, her homeroom teacher, was even more so. Whenever something good happened in school or class, Sun Ying's name would always appear in her name list. Many of her classmates were secretly envious and wished that they could have a mayor as their father. What is this called? Life is full of ups and downs. I never thought that the highest-ranking official I've ever met would become a prisoner. The middle school students whispered among themselves. Sun Ying and her mother were the ones who wrote the complaint letter for revenge. They said that they couldn't find anything. That's so scary. She reported her own father. Why did I hear that Sun Ying was the one who reported her father to the police in order to free herself? How do you know? I've never heard of this. It should be true. I didn't expect Sun Ying to be so ruthless. She even dared to kill her own father in order to get me out. Thank God I didn't offend Sun to offend me to my back. One of the girls patted her chest lightly. There was obvious fear on her face. She then turned to He Jimin and asked, "You used to be so close to Sun Ying. Didn't you notice that there was something wrong with her character?" He Jimin did not want to have anything to do with Sun Ying at all. Her face turned cold as she replied stiffly, "Why are you asking so many questions? Can't you see for yourself?" Chapter 2484. In front of Yi Qian, she felt guilty, but in front of her former classmates, He Jimin still had the same temper. They were all the same. There was no need for her to be afraid. Tan Wei was a smooth talker. He smiled and said, "For years ago, we were all girls in our teens. How could we know so much? We didn't think so much. It's different now. We haven't kept in touch with Sun Ying since we graduated from middle school. Like you guys, we didn't expect her to be so ruthless." That's true. The girl who asked the question didn't say anything else. When she looked away, she rolled her eyes at He Jimin and snorted to express her disdain. He Jimin's heart was stifled. "Why are you so angry? I'm here today to help you repair your relationship with Yi Jian, not to have conflicts with other students." Tan Wei frowned and tried to persuade him. "If you continue like this, you'll suffer a bigger loss sooner or later." Tan Wei's eyes suddenly widened. Then his expression changed. He tightened his grip on He Jimin's hand and said, "Are you still not convinced? Jimin, are you crazy? You were upset about Yi Qian in high school. Have you forgotten? It's already generous of her not to hold a grudge against you. You still dare to be unconvinced." During the military training in the second year of high school, Yao Jing and Luo Ran tried to embarrass Yi Qian. Sun Ying and He Jimin also tried to do the same. Later, when He Jimin found out that Yi Qian performed well in the military training, she was scared and wrote a letter to Tan Wei to mention it. When Tan Wei found out, he wrote a letter to scold He Jimin and told her to stay away from Sun Ying. Now, looking at He Jimin's expression, Tan Wei couldn't help but shudder. "Jimin, if you continue to be like this, I won't treat you as a friend anymore." Tan Wei didn't try to persuade her anymore. He let go of her wrist and shook his head in disappointment. "What makes you think you're better than Yi Qian? Look at you. You're just an ordinary factory worker who didn't even graduate from high school. And Yi Qian, he's a military student. Don't even think about wearing that military uniform for the rest of your life. Do you understand? This is the difference between you and Yi Qian. Look carefully. Even his future path will be different from yours." He Jimin didn't say a word as she stubbornly pursed her lips. Of course, she knew the difference between her and Yi Qian. It was because she knew it that she couldn't accept it. Just now when she was talking to Yi Qian, even her fingers were trembling. She was afraid that Yi Qian would make things difficult for her. In the past, she was the only one who could make things difficult for Yi Qian. Before she saw Yi Qian, she didn't feel much. Now that she saw her, she was shocked. When she came over to talk to her, she was so scared that even her fingers were trembling. At that time, he didn't think too much about it. Now that he had calmed down and thought about it, his heart was filled with resentment. A person who had been bullied by her in the past had actually become the biggest winner and made her tremble in fear. The huge difference made her feel uneasy. The more she thought about it, the more ashamed and angry she felt. Tan Wei immediately distanced himself from He Jimin and severed ties with her. He didn't want a classmate like her. Wave after wave of discussions from the audience reached Yi Jifan's ears. They were like the sharpest arrows, instantly piercing him into a bloody mess. What was this? What was this? This was humiliating him. He clearly knew, but what could he do? It was impossible for him to protest. The audience seats were meant to accompany the audience. Could he say loudly, "He doesn't want to see any of this, ask them to leave?" Or something like that? What right did he have to say that? Chapter 2485. Facing the piercing gazes and hearing the insulting comments, Yi Jifan, who had handcuffs on his hands and ankles on his feet, walked to the front of the audience on the left with a loud clang. He was attending the trial of his daughter, Sun Ying, as a prisoner. On the left side of the courtroom were Yi Qian and Sun Ying's classmates. The right side of the courtroom was reserved for Sun Dongqing. Yi Zhifan stood still as Sun Dongqing, who was wearing a female prisoner's uniform, was escorted out by the police. The moment the door opened, Sun Dongqing looked up. Her expression was the same as Yi Zhifan's. Why were there so many people? These people... No, these people weren't strangers. They were her daughter's classmates. Her middle school classmates, her high school classmates, and her classmates from various training classes. Why were they all here? Why were they all here? Seeing the young faces, Sun Dongqing couldn't help but tremble. She wasn't trembling for herself, but for her daughter, Sun Ying. Her daughter was still young. In the future, she would enter society and make friends from all over the world. She would tell her former classmates how successful she was and how glorious she was. Her daughter would become the envy of many people in the future. But now they were all her daughter's classmates. Among them were her daughter's close friends. They were all here. They were all here. She had never mentioned her daughter's imprisonment to anyone. She was even more afraid of bumping into her daughter's former classmates. She wanted to keep it a secret for her daughter. When her daughter was released in the future, she could continue to bask in glory. But now they were all here. They were all here. How could she hide it? How could she hide it? She couldn't hide it anymore. The scandal of her daughter being sent to prison and sent back by the army couldn't be hidden anymore. God damn it. They weren't giving Ying a way out. God damn it. They were forcing her daughter, who always cared about her reputation, to die. Sun Dongqing couldn't move her feet. She really couldn't move. What about her daughter? When Ying came out and saw her classmates and friends, how desperate would she be? How sad would she be? Sun Dongqing's eyes were trembling as she looked at the faces one by one. With tears in her eyes, she looked at them with trembling hands. The faces became a little blurry, and she couldn't see them clearly no matter how hard she tried. I beg you, let these people go, okay? I'm begging you. My daughter won't be able to take it. She really won't be able to take it. Sun Dongqing, who loved her daughter dearly, begged. My daughter cares about her reputation the most. These are all her classmates. I beg you, please let my daughter feel better. She has already suffered so much. I beg you to be merciful and let her feel better. The bailiff ignored her. Seeing that she didn't want to leave, he dragged her to the audience seats on the right. Sun Dongqing, whose tears were streaming down her cheeks, could finally see the figure clearly. She saw Yi Zhifan. In that second, she, whose heart had died, poured all her hatred onto Yi Zhifan. They were husband and wife. They were the closest people to each other. But after a divorce, a betrayal, and a fight, they became enemies. Her lifeless eyes suddenly burst into flames. Yi Zhifan, you deserve this. Her tone was so cold that it was as if she couldn't wait to gnaw on his flesh and bones. Sent chills down one's spine. Sun Dongqing, the bailiff warned her coldly. Noise is strictly prohibited in the courtroom. If there's a next time, you will be disqualified. Chapter 2486. Sun Dongqing, who hadn't seen her daughter for a long time and was now worried about her daughter's upcoming court appearance, swallowed the hatred in her heart. She swallowed it until she bit her own tongue until her mouth was filled with the taste of blood. She swallowed it with her mouth, but her eyes couldn't help it. She glared fiercely at Yi Zhifan, as if she would break free from the police at any moment and pounce on Yi Zhifan to take him down with her. Isn't this Auntie Sun Ying's mother? No way. Sun Ying's mother also committed a crime and is locked up? A girl exclaimed in disbelief. It's really her mother. I didn't see wrongly. It's really her mother. As soon as she spoke, the people around her immediately pricked up their ears. It's true. I've never seen her mother. Oh my God. Isn't this family of 3 in jail? As soon as she spoke, the discussions came one after another. Sun Dongqing was so embarrassed that she turned her head left and right in an attempt to escape. They're definitely all in jail. Her mother is also wearing a prison uniform. Her mother reported her father, and in the end, they're all in jail together. Do you think her mother regrets writing the report letter? Who knows? Whatever, let's just listen carefully. Sun Ying's whole family is so scary. It's better if they're locked up. Sun Ying will be locked up too. Just thinking about how I used to eat and drink with her, and how we used to sleep on the same bed when we went out to play, makes my hair stand on end. Such a ruthless person. She's really capable of doing anything. Don't be afraid. It's not too late to find out now. Just stay away from her in the future. When these words fell into Sun Dongqing's ears, she, who was in despair, was so angry that her whole body trembled. Ying is such a good girl. What are you looking down on her for? She raised her head and wanted to glare at the young girl who said these words, but a face that she hated to the bone suddenly appeared in her vision. Yiqian. She saw Yiqian. Damn girl. She still has the face to come here. She didn't save anyone and still has the face to come here in a military uniform. Isn't she ashamed? No, right now it wasn't Yiqian who was being humiliated. It was her precious daughter who was being humiliated. God damn it, it was all this bastard's fault. That bastard who didn't even try to save her daughter had caused her Ying to lose so much face. On one side was Yi Jifan, and on the other side was Yiqian. This was great. The people Sun Dongqing hated the most were all present. She couldn't even see enough. It's these two bastards who deserve to die. She caused Ying to be in such a miserable state. If she had followed him to save Ying that day, none of this would have happened. The heavens were blind. The old thing had been shut down, but Yiqian, that bastard, could still continue to be so carefree. She even deliberately wore a military uniform to provoke Ying. What a cruel and vicious heart. The heavens were blind. No one could see the true face of this bastard. Sun Dongqing's face was twisted, and her eyes were filled with a sinister light. She glared at Yiqian. There was too much hatred in her heart, and she was too angry. She clenched her teeth so hard that the sound of bones being gnawed could be heard. The bailiff nudged Sun Dongqing, who had stopped walking, again. Sun Dongqing, walk forward. Sun Dongqing, who wanted to glare at Yiqian again, was awakened by the bailiff's cold voice. She had no choice but to walk forward. Although she was walking, her entire attention was focused on Yiqian. She didn't even spare a glance at anyone else. Until the villagers of Shuku village, Sun Dongqing hadn't seen them yet. From tilting her head to turning her head, she kept staring at Yiqian. She walked around the audience seats and arrived at the audience seats where the villagers of Shuka village were seated. Sun Dongqing, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Chapter 2487. A voice filled with schadenfreude came from behind. Sun Dongqing, who had yet to sit down, suddenly froze. The resentful expression on her face froze for a moment. Why did she hear the voice of the famous gossipy woman in the village? What's wrong? You don't even dare to look at your neighbors? That's right. You've done something wrong and are waiting to be sentenced. How would you dare to be arrogant like before, looking down on us barefoot commoners with your nose in the air? A familiar ear-piercing voice rang out clearly. Sun Dongqing turned her head and saw several villagers from Shuku village. She was stunned. Even the villagers knew about Ying's situation. Then, how would Ying return to the village in the future? Why was her Ying's life so miserable? All she met were a bunch of people who kicked her when she was down. None of them stood up to help her. They were all a bunch of despicable people. Sun Dongqing's heart was filled with anger. Her mouth was so bitter that it felt like a handful of Chinese gold thread was stuffed into it. Life in prison wasn't too good. Look, you've lost a lot of weight. TSK, TSK, TSK. You used to be as fat as a pig. When you walked, your chest swayed like a sack. Now that you've slimmed down, you're not as annoying as before. The person who spoke was you Big Mouth, who used to flatter her. In the past, she used to have a laughable face to please her. Now, this bitch even dared to step on her face. Hearing these despicable words, the furious Sun Dongqing's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her face was green, white, and purple. It was extremely interesting. She glared fiercely. Just as her cracked mouth opened and closed a little, The curses rushed to her throat. The bailiff's cold voice came. Sun Dongqing, sit down. The cold and serious voice reminded Sun Dongqing. Once again, she had no choice but to shut her mouth. Retribution, Sun Dongqing. You also have a day like this. It's really retribution. Ha ha ha. You big mouth said in a low voice and laughed softly. Her words were filled with the taste of watching a show. This made Sun Dongqing secretly clench her fists. Sun Dongqing, who didn't dare to curse out loud, could only curse in her heart. She sat down. 2 bailiffs stood beside her, one on the left and one on the right, to prevent her from disrupting the judicial order. Too hateful. Too hateful. These people were too hateful. Her poor daughter, what about her? When she came out and saw these people, she would go crazy. She would really go crazy. Udazwi still wanted to vent her anger and get back at Sun Dongqing for the whole day. When the bailiff gave her a warning, Udazwi was shocked and immediately shut her mouth. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. What's there to warn me about? Who are you trying to scare? She muttered softly. In the end, she did not dare to say anything more. Sun Dongqing, who finally has some peace and quiet, slowly loosens her clenched fists. Although there are villagers with their backs facing the Shuka village, sitting in front of her feels like a thorn in her back. They were all people he knew. Even if he went out in the future, he would be pointed at and talked about wherever he went. She was already old, so it didn't matter. However, Ying was different. She was still at the age of a flower bud. Today, all these people were here. How was she going to face the criticism of others in the future? How was her poor daughter going to live in the future? As soon as Sun Dongqing thought about Sun Ying's appearance, her heart ached for her daughter. Yi Jifan was so embarrassed that his face turned red. He didn't have the face to face the audience. Sun Dongqing was really thinking for Sun Ying. As a mother, she was undoubtedly qualified to be Sun Ying's mother. Chapter 2488. Sun Dongqing, whose heart was in a mess, couldn't sit still. She urgently needed to find an outlet to vent her anger. She once again looked at Yi Jian with resentment. Only by glaring fiercely like this could she feel a little more comfortable and reconciled. Sun Dongqing was cursing in her heart, and when she saw that young face again, her heart rate became unstable. Her daughter was going to go crazy. She was definitely going to go crazy. The tears that she tried so hard to hold back flowed down again, and she glared at Yi Qian even more fiercely and fiercely. When she glared at Yi Qian, Ho Zi, who was sitting with her, naturally felt it too. He sent a text message to Xia Yiwei, who was resting in the hotel. He turned to Yi Qian and said calmly, "She won't change. She'll be a problem as long as we keep her. We should get rid of all future troubles." Ho Zi knew a few people in prison, so it was possible to get rid of Sun Dongqing. Yi Qian understood what he meant. He shook his head and said softly, "Sorry to trouble you, Brother Zi. She doesn't need us to deal with her, someone else will. People with bad tempers usually offend people more easily." Sun Dongqing not only had a bad temper, but she also always thought that she was better than others. When she was sentenced and sent to prison, she would suffer. In prison, there was no lack of bad-tempered prisoners. Ho Zi smiled faintly and didn't say anything more. He gave the suggestion, and whether Yi Qian listened to him or not was his business. A girl with her own ideas usually wouldn't make things difficult for herself. But she was right. Take Director Ye's wife, for example. With her temper and the sense of loss from falling from the clouds to the mud, the process was very torturous. With a bad temper, she couldn't accept the fact that she lost her identity. If the prisoners next to her were to say something sarcastic, something big would happen. Therefore, a girl with her own ideas usually wouldn't make things difficult for herself, and wouldn't let herself be taken advantage of. As for Director Yi Wei said that he was involved in the murder of the martyr Sun Xueqing. This wasn't an ordinary crime. In addition, he helped Sun Yaozu with a few land bids, so it was enough for him to stay here for the rest of his life. 2 minutes to 2 o'clock. A clerk in court uniform walked out. He finished explaining the court rules, and the presiding judge and the judge sat down. Ho Zi also stood up, and his gaze fell on the solemn national emblem hanging in the middle of the courtroom. He covered his mouth and coughed softly. He suddenly remembered that it was the first time he had come to the court as a gangster, and he was even listening in as a spectator. When he saw the solemn national emblem, he instantly felt a little strange. After the presiding judges, the court, it was time for the trial to begin. The presiding judge informed the bailiff to bring Sun Ying to court. Sun Yaozu, wearing a female's prison uniform, with handcuffs on her handcuffs. After a few months of prison life, Sun Yaozu was as thin as a piece of paper. She was so light that it seemed like the wind could blow her away. But her eyes were so bright that it was scary. They were big and bright, and the light in them wasn't as bright as the sun. Instead, they were filled with darkness, as if they were crazy enough to destroy everything. The first thing Sun Ying did when she walked out of the arena was to look for Yi Jian. Perhaps she was tired of seeing him, but before she could walk out of the arena, she saw Yi Jian in his military uniform among the audience. She was wearing a prison uniform, and Yi Jian, the person she hated the most, the person she wanted to step on the most, was wearing a military uniform and sitting among the audience, looking at her. She was a prisoner, she was a soldier. One was in heaven, one was on earth. Chapter 2489. It's Yi Ying. I know it's Sun Ying. It's really her. It's her. Why else would we be here? Sun Ying's classmates were the first to speak. They pointed and frowned, their eyes full of disdain. Yi Jian was no stranger to these gazes. In her previous life, she had lived in such disdainful gazes all her life. She had been pointed at by others all her life. That's Yi Jian. I couldn't tell that he was this kind of person. He knows how to seduce a teacher at such a young age. Tui, this kind of woman should be drowned in a pig cage. Let's stay away from her. Look at her seductive appearance. I can tell she's not a good person. That's her towel, right? There shouldn't be any infectious diseases on it, right? Throw it in the trash. We can't keep this clothes rack either. Throw it all away. Throw it all away. I want to change dorms. I don't want to be in the same dorm as her. The insults from her previous life echoed in her ears. Mockery, ridicule, insults, ridicule, disdain, isolation, rejection. In her previous life, she lived such a life until her death. In this life, she was bullied by her classmates in the first half of her second year of middle school. Sun Dongxing beat her and Sun Ying insulted her. Today, there was an earth-shattering change. It was no longer Yi Jian who was being pointed and gossiped about, but it was finally Sun Ying's turn. 2 lives. After waiting for 2 lives, she finally saw this day. She had to admit that Madame Li's arrangement made her very, very satisfied. Yi Jian, who was sitting in the audience, curled his lips. His faint smile was cold. It made his originally cold and indifferent facial features have a touch of mystery. Even though he knew it was dangerous, he still wanted to investigate. The voices of the people pointing and gossiping converged into an arrow. Before Sun Ying could react, there was a whoosh sound as it shot towards her. Her footsteps paused for a moment. She stared blankly in front of her. What's going on? What's going on? Why did she see so many people? Her middle school classmates, her high school classmates, and her former classmates from the training class. No, she didn't want to see these people. She didn't want to see these people. She was Yi Ying, not Sun Ying. She was Yi Ying who was envied by her classmates. She had a father who was a high-ranking official and lived a rich life. She could get whatever she wanted. Even if she did something wrong, she would be forgiven. Even the teachers would not punish her easily. In front of them, she was the outstanding Yi Ying who was loved by her teachers and envied by her classmates. Why did they come? What kind of look was that? Looking down on him? Looking at him with disdain? Who do you think you are to look down on her? Sun Ying was completely nailed to the ground by the incessant discussion. She couldn't take another step. She couldn't take another step. She couldn't accept the looks in those people's eyes and the way they were pointing at her. The things that she wanted to hide were exposed to everyone. From now on, she would live in the eyes of these people who would say that she was a prisoner who was rejected by the army. No. She did not want to go out. She did not want to go out. Sun Ying's palm-sized face was filled with fear. She refused to go out and face her classmates today. Now that they knew, what was she going to do in the future? Chapter 2490. Sob. What was she going to do in the future? How was she going to live? How was she going to maintain her sense of superiority? Her head was no longer held high. Instead, she lowered it again and again. She wanted to hide in a hole so that no one could see her. No, she didn't want them to see her like this. She didn't want them to see her like this. No, she didn't want to go out. She didn't want the wretched girl whom she had once trampled to death to see her in such a sorry state. I want to go back. I don't want to go out. I want to go back. Sun Ying, who felt extremely humiliated, didn't want to leave. She stood there and shrank back. She wanted to escape from everyone's sight. She didn't want her former classmates to see her in a prison uniform. I'm not guilty. I can't go out in a prison uniform. I need to change my clothes. I need to change my clothes before I go out. Sun Ying began to struggle, but she didn't dare to go too far. She could only beg in a small voice. The bailiffs didn't ignore the rules of the court. Sun Ying wasn't the only prisoner who made a request before the trial. The two expressionless bailiffs dragged Sun Ying, who didn't want to appear in court, to the courtroom. I don't want to. Sob. Mom, I don't want to appear in court. Sun Ying appeared in front of everyone with disheveled hair. When Sun Dongxing saw this, she didn't care about the warning anymore. She screamed at the top of her lungs. Ying, Mom is here. Mom is here with you. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Mom is here. Sun Ying heard a familiar voice and raised her head. Her eyes were red as she finally found Sun Dongxing. She wanted to shout and put on a show of mother-daughter reunion, but the presiding judge picked up the hammer and knocked it 3 times. His voice was very serious. Silence. Don't make a noise. The presiding judge warned and didn't let the bailiffs take Sun Dongxing away. Sun Ying saw Sun Dongxing at the scene, and her eyes were filled with tears. She wanted to ask her mother for help, but when she saw Sun Dongxing wearing the same prison uniform as her, and Yi Zhifan in a male prison uniform from the corner of her eye, Sun Ying closed her eyes. She refused to look at the scene that made her feel despair. A family of 3, all dressed in prison uniforms. As for her, the person she looked down on the most, the person she wanted to trample on the most, was dressed in a military uniform. His features were picturesque, and he only needed to sweep his gaze across the family of 3 dressed in prison uniforms. The students sitting next to her all looked at her. Although they no longer pointed at her, their eyes were full of contempt, as if they were looking at a criminal. They all looked down on him and thought that he was unforgivable. What right do you have to look down on her? Do you think you're any better? She still wanted to laugh at her? Dream on. No one could laugh at her, belittling her. No one had the right to do so. She would not return to Shueiko village, nor would she contact anyone. She could even change her name and live in another place. That way, wouldn't no one recognize him? No one knows about my past? Sun Ying, who was forced to despair by everyone's gazes, found another excuse for herself. It had to be said that she was a very strong-willed person. She could escape from reality time and time again. Forever living in the world she made up for herself. In this world, she was the queen. So, whenever Sun Ying felt dissatisfied, it would trigger the self-righteous chord in her heart. Chapter 2491. At this moment, Sun Ying was enraged. The fire in her heart erupted like a volcano that had been dormant for thousands of years. She also felt humiliated, and this humiliation came from that videotape. And who sent that videotape? It could only be Yi Qian, only her. Today, she was in this state because of Yi Qian's videotape. Other than her, no one else could have schemed to harm her. Therefore, she had to leave. She couldn't just sit there and wait for death. She couldn't admit defeat. There were so many classmates who came to laugh at her. She couldn't afford to lose. Ying, you're Ying. You can't admit defeat. You can't admit defeat. Sun Ying kept encouraging herself as her vision darkened. Her legs were trembling, and she tried her best to relax so that she wouldn't look too pathetic. She let the 2 police officers lead her out. Her former classmates all saw her expression. Seeing her expression, they couldn't help but feel surprised and amused. She was wearing a prisoner's uniform, but she could still lift her chin and look at them coldly. This Sun Ying was really amazing. She glared at me just now. Damn, she looked like she wanted to kill someone. A boy from her former junior high class whispered to Zhou Liao, "She's really disgusting like this. Don't say anything. Otherwise, the judge will hammer you again." Zhou Liao glanced at Sun Ying. She was indeed disgusting. At this point, she was still pretending that she didn't do anything wrong. This kind of person was really disgusting. Another wave of whispers came. Sun Ying, who was walking out, vaguely heard someone say, "I've stayed away from her. I still have her contact information. I'll delete it when I get back. There's also a message in my graduation album. I'll tear it up when I get back." These whispers came faintly. Sun Ying suddenly felt humiliated from head to toe. Her face felt like it had been slapped a few times. It was so painful that even her toes curled up. Yi Qian naturally heard it too. "Listen, Sun Ying. These are the words you deserve. No matter how hard you try to escape, they'll follow you like a shadow. They'll follow you like a shadow that you can't shake off. They'll haunt you day and night until you break down. You can escape from reality now, but in the future you will only be more miserable. At that time, I hope you can continue to avoid reality." Yi Jifan's daughter is also an anomaly. If it were anyone else, they would have drowned in her saliva. Even if she didn't drown, she would have died of shame. Ho Zi glanced at Sun Ying, who was pretending to be fine. He saw through her with one glance and revealed a faint mocking smile. He sighed to Yi Qian and said, "This kind of person won't learn from her mistakes. It's hard to endure now. After this, they will continue to stir up trouble. Let's see what Madame Li will do." For the first time, Yi Qian took the initiative to glance at Sun Ying, who was still staring at him. He tilted his head slightly and answered Ho Zi, "Madame Li will make her beg for death. Now that she's certain that she'll be able to get out, let's just let her be happy for a while." On the other side, Sun Ying's gaze met with Yi Qian's. Her gaze couldn't help but fall on Yi Qian's military uniform. The vibrant green color made her eyes hurt. She had worn this kind of uniform before. She had worn it before, but she had only worn it for a few days before taking it off and handing it over. Hand it over, hand it over. What's the big deal? She didn't care. Sun Ying's eyes flashed with deep jealousy. She constantly adjusted her breathing to numb herself in exchange for a peace of mind. Chapter 2492. As she walked through the audience, she heard the voices floating from above. She kept telling herself, "It's okay. It's okay. They're not important people. Let them say whatever they want." She was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in, but she had to numb herself and choose to escape from reality. Then she stood up again and again. This time, Sun Ying believed that she could walk out of prison because Madame Li had promised her. Secondly, someone came to visit her last night and gave her a reassuring pill. You don't have to be afraid. Since Madame Li allowed you to leave, she's naturally prepared a foolproof plan for you. Besides, you didn't commit any substantial crimes. At most, you'll be charged with defamation. What's there to be afraid of? Behave yourself tomorrow. It wasn't easy for Madame Li to arrange all this. If you ruin the plan, you might not be able to leave. Tomorrow, be good and behave. That way, you'll have less trouble. Do you understand? The words of someone who came to tell her last night echoed in her mind. Sun Ying, whose legs were trembling, gradually relaxed. There was nothing to be afraid of. Madame Li had already arranged everything. Other than defamation, there was no need to worry about any other charges. The army sent her back. It had nothing to do with Yi Qian. She had already accepted the fine and imprisonment. Today, she would definitely regain her freedom like that person said last night. Regaining her freedom was what she had dreamed of day and night. Even if it meant stepping on her biological father's life, she would walk out of prison. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. This was what her good father taught her. Her good father, who didn't care about his own family for his own future, taught her, Just a second ago, Sun Ying was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole in the ground because of his prison uniform. But now he suddenly grinned. It was extremely eerie and terrifying. She no longer lowered her head. Instead, she raised her head and admitted defeat. No, she would not admit defeat. Even if she was Sun Ying and not Yi Ying, she would not admit defeat. Madame Li said that she would regain her freedom this time. The person who came to visit her last night also said that she would be fine. See? Even if she was in prison uniform, there were still people helping her. But what about Yi Qian? What could she do even if she planned everything? Could she win against Madame Li's words? Could they win against power? Thinking of this, Sun Ying could not help but feel a little proud. She subconsciously wanted to raise her chin and face Yi Qian with an arrogant look. However, before she could do so, the bailiff who escorted her to the stage locked the small fence that was just above her waist. In the silence of the scene, the sound of the lock being unlocked was extremely loud. Everyone was summoned with a click. This was the treatment of a prisoner. As long as you were wearing a prisoner's uniform, you were a prisoner. Sun Ying, who wanted to make up for her embarrassment, did not show any arrogance. Instead, she looked a little embarrassed. Sun Ying's face turned red from embarrassment. She glanced around with the corner of her eyes and noticed something that made her feel even better. Madame Li was right. As long as she stepped forward, there was nothing she couldn't do. Look, that wretched girl Yi Qian didn't even dare to hire a lawyer. She only dared to sit in the audience. Yi Qian found it funny. She really didn't know how Sun Ying, who was wearing a prison uniform, could still put on airs in front of her. Just because Mrs. Li agreed to hire a lawyer for her? She agreed to let her regain her freedom today? How could she be so naive? She was not naive. She was stupid. Chapter 2493. In a fit of anger, Madame Li could make her lose everything. She could even force Sun Dongxing into a dead end. In the end, she completely fell out with Yi Zhifan. In the end, their relationship as husband and wife was ruined. A letter of complaint was sent to the Commission for Discipline Inspection, and they became enemies. Sun Ying actually thought that she could get away with Madame Li like this. Pitiful, pitiful, really pitiful. She was certain that what awaited Sun Ying after she walked out of the courthouse was definitely not freedom, but a dead end where she could neither live nor die. A dead end that was pitch black and full of thorns that would cause Sun Ying to bleed with every step she took. In the face of Sun Ying's arrogance, Yi Qian smiled faintly. He glanced at Sun Ying and didn't look at her anymore. Yi Qian didn't hire a lawyer, so the whole process ended very quickly. In addition, Madame Li hired a lawyer for Sun Ying and made sufficient preparations. Sun Ying, who was sent back by the army, had already received the punishment she deserved and should be released in court. The presiding judge had already looked at Sun Ying's case. As the lawyer said, Sun Ying didn't commit any substantial crimes. Her main crime was defamation. The lawyer that Madame Li hired for Yi Qian also submitted the documents, which happened to be the documents that Yi Qian signed yesterday. Everything went according to Madame Li's plan. Sun Ying was forgiven by Yi Qian and would be released in court after she apologized. Sun Dongxing cried tears of joy. Great, great, her precious daughter was finally fine. Everything was over. It was all over. Everything she did was worth it. It was all worth it. Great, great, it's finally fine. It's finally fine. At this moment, Sun Dongxing's tears rushed out. Even if she was going to be locked up for 8 to 10 years, she didn't mind. She was happy, but Yi Zhifan glared at her angrily. Yi Qian said yesterday that he wouldn't let Sun Ying leave, but he didn't do it. She didn't do what she promised him. For a moment, Yi Zhifan was so angry that his vision turned black. He wanted to rush over and question Yi Qian. When the students sitting in the audience and the villagers of Shuka village heard what Sun Ying had done to Yi Ying all these years, they were all dumbfounded. How could she frame Yi Qian like this? At that time, she said something about Yi Qian writing a love letter to the math teacher, and she even saw it. Oh my God! I believed her. Also, when she said that Yi Qian plagiarized during the exam, I also believed her. He even helped her speak up for Yi Qian. This is too much. Sun Ying had been using us all along. Do you think we're fools? Your Honor, This judgment is unfair to Yi Qian. A high school classmate stood up and pointed at Sun Ying. He said angrily, "She started rumors and caused Yi Qian to suffer so much. She was misunderstood by so many people. But look at her now. She's not repentant at all. He's obviously proud of himself. It's not fair. She can't be convicted of slander so easily. It was too light. Such a person was clearly the scum of society. She won't be grateful even if we let her off just like that. She even thinks that it's only right. Your Honor, you can't do this. She did so many wrong things and almost caused Yi Qian to drop out of school. How can she be let off with just an apology?" It wasn't just one person who protested. After one person started it, at least 10 people joined in. Hearing these voices, Sun Ying, who was so scared that her face turned pale, shrunk her shoulders. She held onto the railing tightly to support her weak body. Chapter 2494. Yuda had a bold mouth and chimed in. "We're not convinced either. Sun Ying has been bullying Yi Qian since she was young. How is it just a matter of an apology? She should at least pay some compensation. What's with the damage to her reputation?" What damage to her reputation? Even if she's fine, she can forget about staying in the village anymore. She's a disgrace. She's causing us to be pointed at and criticized. Hearing these voices, Sun Ying was so scared that her face turned pale. She shrunk her shoulders and held on to the railing to support her weak body. Her eyes were filled with horror. She looked at her protesting classmates, then at Yi Qian, then at the judge. No, she couldn't just sit here and wait for her death. She had to think of a way. The solemn courtroom suddenly became noisy. Sun Dongxing flew into a rage. The young villagers objected, and the villagers said that her daughter was not allowed to return to the village. Everyone wanted her daughter to continue suffering. She couldn't stand it anymore and yelled, "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to talk about my daughter? You?" She wanted to continue yelling, but the presiding judge picked up the hammer and hit it 3 times. "Silence! Silence!" He then said to the bailiff, "Take her away." He didn't want Sun Dongxing to listen in anymore. Sun Dongxing, who had just heard the result, was finally relieved. But now she was on tenterhooks again. The bailiff took her away and she immediately struggled. "No, I'm not leaving. I want to hear the result. I'm Sun Ying's mother. I have the right to listen in." "You're disrupting the order of the court. Take her away." The presiding judge slammed the hammer in his hand. The bailiff no longer showed mercy and dragged Sun Dongxing away from the scene like a dead pig. Seeing this, Yi Jifan, who was furious in his heart, revealed a cold smile. Endangering the safety of the court or disrupting the order of the court was punishable by a fine or detention according to the relevant laws. If a crime was committed, criminal responsibility would be pursued according to the law. Unfortunately, the useless Sun Dongxing didn't manage to break free from the bailiff. Otherwise, there would be more to see. After Sun Dongxing was forcefully dragged away, the entire courtroom quieted down and adjourned for the time being. Above, the presiding judge was talking to the jury in detail. Below, Yi Qian was talking to his old classmate. When things quieted down, the court was temporarily adjourned. Yi Qian smiled at his old classmate who was furious after discovering the truth. "Thank you, old classmate, for defending me. Some things are better left unsaid. Everyone just needs to believe me. Regardless of whether Sun Ying is truly repentant or not, now that the truth is out, I have nothing to be unhappy about. She has indeed been punished. We have to believe that the trial was fair and just. I know everyone is angry and wants to fight for justice for me. But, old classmate, I've made it very clear just now. Sun Ying's crime is indeed defamation." She felt indignant for Yi Qian, and angry that she had been deceived. With Yi Qian's persuasion, the voices gradually died down. "Are you really going to forgive her just like that? Yi Qian, look at all the things she has done. How despicable. Although it doesn't cause any physical harm, sometimes the damage to one's heart is deeper than the visible damage." Zhang Na pursed her lips and said in a low and cold voice, "Now is the time to teach her a lesson. She should be taught a lesson. Look at her behavior just now. How is she admitting her wrongdoings? She was clearly provoking you. Even if she was provoking you, she was like a grasshopper in the late autumn. She wouldn't be able to jump around for long. Chapter 24:95. Yi Qian couldn't explain to them how painful Sun Ying's life would be in the future. She still remembered how they defended her classmates, especially her high school classmates. They were all hostile towards Sun Ying. Didn't you say that we should be lenient whenever possible? Even Yi Qian didn't take it to heart. Why are you all taking it to heart? A discordant voice was heard. Everyone looked over. It was He Jimin. Seeing that everyone was looking at her with dissatisfaction, He Jimin felt timid. She lowered her head and said timidly, I didn't say anything wrong. Yi Qian is a soldier now. He can't possibly make things difficult for Sun Ying. It'll affect his image. Anyway, I think that since Yi Qian didn't take it to heart, we don't have to either. He Jimin dug her nails into her palms and finished her sentence. Yi Qian glanced at her. Her gaze deepened. He Jimin felt a little scared by her gaze. She immediately put on a fawning smile. That's right. Jimin is right. Her smile made Yi Qian raise her brows slightly. She didn't seem to notice anything. Instead, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, That's what Jimin meant. So, thank you, my old classmates, for defending me. Since she didn't have any objections, the classmates who came over to listen didn't have any objections either. This matter was between Yi Qian and Sun Ying. Since the person in charge didn't have any objections, it would be annoying if they continued to talk about it. He Jimin turned her head away and exhaled softly. Out of the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw Tan Wei staring at her coldly. He Jimin's expression stiffened. Then, she gently tugged at the corners of her mouth and forced a smile. Jimin, do you really think you can make things difficult for Yi Qian just because of this? Tan Wei said coldly, Don't think that you're smart. Yi Qian didn't get to where she is today just because of her good grades. Here. He pointed to his head and then tapped his eyes. She's here. Everything's clear. Everything's clear as day. You can't even hide it from me. Do you think you can hide it from Yi Qian? He Jimin's lips trembled. After a while, she pretended not to understand and replied with a stiff face. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Even if you don't understand, it's fine as long as you understand. After Tan Wei finished speaking, he gave He Jimin a final kind warning before looking away. Some people would not turn back until they hit the wall. Jia Min and Sun Ying were essentially the same type of people. They would not turn back even if they fell and bled. There was no point in persuading him any further, lest he end up becoming enemies. Yi Qian, who had comforted his classmate, also used the same words to appease the villagers. Compared to his classmate, the villagers were much calmer. Village chief Zhang Degua, who was addicted to smoking, rubbed a cigarette in his hand. After hearing the explanation, he put the cigarette back into his pocket and sighed. We don't know anything. We'll listen to you. Whatever you say, we'll listen. The village chief is right. Little Yi, do as you see fit. Anyway, Auntie Yu has already said our opinion. We won't let Sun Ying come back to the village in the future. We don't want to ruin the good things in our village. That's it. The sooner we settle this, the sooner you can go back to school with peace of mind. You're the most promising person in the surrounding villages now. There's no need to worry about a family full of sinners. The villagers spoke one after another. Everything they said was up to Yi Qian. They didn't have any opinions. These things, they didn't understand. Chapter 24:96. When the trial resumed, it was completely silent. The lawyer Madame Li hired for Yi Qian once again expressed that they had no objections to the trial. They would apologize and compensate Yi Qian for the damage to his reputation. Yi Jifan couldn't help but close his eyes. He didn't want to hear any more. She had played all her cards, but in the end, all she got was Yi Qian's deception. There was no way she could pull Sun Ying down. That's right. With Madame Li's intervention, what could Yi Qian, a military academy student, do? She didn't ask the people behind her to intervene. She definitely couldn't do anything. Sun Ying, who had waited for the final verdict, smiled. This time she was much smarter. She lowered her head and smiled. She smiled so proudly that her shoulders trembled. It looked like she was crying. The fence was opened, and the bailiff unlocked the handcuffs on her hands. He said, "Congratulations." Then, he led Sun Ying away from the courtroom. Without the handcuffs, Sun Ying felt like she was free. She didn't feel embarrassed. She lifted her chin slightly and walked step by step to Yi Qian's stand. She stared at Yi Qian, her eyes burning with fighting spirit. She really wanted to tell Yi Qian loudly that everything was in vain. She would never be able to defeat Sun Ying. She wanted to laugh out loud. She wanted to laugh at Yi Qian's empty scheme. She wanted to laugh at how she had to bow down to Madame Li's power even though she was a military academy student. Ha ha ha. Yi Qian, Yi Qian. Look, look, look carefully. You want to scheme against me, Sun Ying? Do you think you can scheme against me, Sun Ying? Dream on. You must be dreaming. Even though Sun Ying was trying hard to suppress her smugness and laugh on the inside, it was obvious from her expression. Principal Chun, who was accompanying her, couldn't help but frown. Sun Ying didn't realize that she was wrong. She was still smugness and provoking him with her eyes. Yi Qian gently tugged at Principal Chen's hand. "It's okay, Uncle Chen. She won't have many good days ahead of her. Really, trust me." "Unrepentant," Principal Chen said in a low voice. His eyes were full of sharpness. This was the sharpness that only a sniper would have when he stared at his target. It had a power that made one's scalp tingle and had nowhere to run. Sun Ying, who was walking over, was swept by such a gaze. A huge wave of panic suddenly hit her, causing her knees to go soft, and she stumbled a few times. As she walked closer, Sun Ying bowed deeply. Principal Chun stared at her intently. She spoke in a trembling voice. "I'm sorry, Yi Qian. I was wrong. I deeply apologize for what I did in the past. It's all because I'm too vain and too competitive. I can't stand that you're more outstanding than me and more capable than me. That's why I went out to spread rumors again and again and hurt you again and again. I'm sorry, Yi Qian. I was wrong. Please forgive me." Even when she spoke, she lowered her head, not daring to look up. Principal Chen's gaze filled her with fear. "It's good that you know. Now that everyone knows that you were the one who spread rumors and caused trouble behind my back, I can finally clear my name." Yi Qian played along with her, but what he said definitely wouldn't be to her liking. "Now that everyone knows what kind of person you are, no one will believe you if you say anything bad about me in the future. Then I'm relieved. After all, I'm still a student. Once my reputation is damaged, it's fine if it's true, but if it's not, the person who spread the rumors will be punished by the law." Chapter 24:97. This was a moderate threat, but it was also a warning. However, Yi Qian did not expect it to have any effect. She just wanted to say it, and she wanted to see Sun Ying's expression turn uglier and uglier. So she said it. "I hope you don't spout nonsense in the future. Not only will people not believe you, but they will also hate you more and more. Just like now, you see." Yi Qian leaned forward slightly and said in an even lower voice, "You see now, you're like a dog that has lost its home. Everyone hates you." Sun Ying was already on the verge of tolerating it. She bit her lower lip so hard that there were deep teeth marks. Just when she thought Yi Qian had finished speaking, she suddenly heard her soft chuckle. "Congratulations on gaining your freedom today. In the future, each day will be more miserable than the last, and I will laugh as I see your most tragic end." Yi Qian. Her suppressed emotions exploded. Sun Ying raised her head and glared at Yi Qian. Then, she replied darkly, "Likewise, likewise, but I'll wait. I hope that when the time comes, it won't be your mother who comes with a knife." After saying this, Sun Ying's heart suddenly sank. Her pupils constricted as she stared at Yi Qian, trying to find something. Yi Qian did not mention that her mother had brought a knife to stab her, nor did she mention that she had thought of this idea. Why didn't she mention it? She clearly did not forget. But why didn't she mention it? Why didn't she mention it? Yi Qian did not answer her. He only revealed an even more enigmatic smile. Yi Jifan had been paying attention to Yi Qian. When he saw a trace of ruthlessness flash past Yi Qian's calm expression, the anger in his heart was immediately extinguished. That's right, Yi Qian was someone who could endure. Sun Ying really could not be convicted of a major crime now. She would definitely wait for the right opportunity. The trial that lasted for more than an hour finally ended. As the judge slammed his gavel and announced the end of the court, everyone in courtroom number 2 stood up and watched the presiding judge and his party leave. The tightly shut heavy wooden door was pushed open, and the audience began to leave. Principal Chun did not go with Yi Qian. She would definitely have to greet her middle school and high school classmates later, so he went over to greet the villagers of Shuka village. Ho Zi walked even faster. She said to Yi Qian, "You go ahead." Then she got up and left. He didn't want to come to this place a second time. It was a strange feeling. Fortunately, he had turned from black to white. Otherwise, it would be even more unnatural. As they walked out of the courthouse, a wave of heat hit them in the face. Their middle and high school classmates had all gathered together and were chatting enthusiastically with Yi Qian. Someone even suggested that they find a place to have dinner. The court session would start at 2 in the afternoon, and it was only 3 in the afternoon. It was a little early to have dinner. "Let's find a coffee shop and see if there's a bigger one nearby. Otherwise, we won't be able to sit down." Zhang Na stood side by side with Yi Qian. There was a deep smile on her beautiful face. "I don't think I've seen Yi Qian before. Let's chat together." "That's fine. I just don't know if Yi Qian has time. We have to ask for her opinion first." Zhou Liao joked. "If Yi Qian really has time, we can sit together." It was the holidays now, so Yi Qian still had time. She smiled and said, "Then let's find a coffee shop and sit down. We won't have dinner together tonight. I still have to go back to school after I'm done here." That's good. The sun is so hot outside. It's hurting my skin. Let's use an umbrella. I think it's hot too." They were having a good time chatting with each other. Chapter 2498. Her classmates from the same training class as Yi Qian didn't go with her. They weren't familiar with Yi Qian, so they didn't join in. They stood to the side and whispered to each other, occasionally looking up at the entrance of the court. He Jimin looked up and said to her classmates, "I won't be going. I'm not feeling well, so I want to go back to the factory to rest." She even raised her head and rubbed her forehead to increase her credibility. Just as Tan Wei had said, Yi Jian could see through her little tricks. As a special forces soldier, it was necessary for her to distinguish whether the other party was telling the truth or not through the subtle changes in a person's facial expression. He Jimin was obviously lying, and it could be seen at a glance. What she was thinking and what she was going to do next could be seen from her constant glances at the entrance of the court. Old classmates hadn't seen each other for a long time, so it was natural for them to get together more often. Yi Qian didn't force her. He smiled and said, "Okay. Thank you for your hard work today. It's not hard. He Jimin saw that the people she was waiting for had appeared, so she immediately straightened her body and turned her back to the entrance of the court. She urged, "Hurry up and leave. Don't stand in the sun for too long. It's easy to get a heat stroke after being exposed to the air conditioner for so long." Tan Wei, whose expression changed, glanced at her. She sighed in her heart and didn't try to persuade her. Yi Qian had to go greet Principal Chun and the villagers. He said, "Sorry, please wait for her for a while." Then he walked in the direction of Shuka village. Under the sunlight, her military uniform was tall and slender against the background, growing straight like bamboo. The students who were waiting for her couldn't help but stare at her back. Seeing Yi Qian, who exuded military might with every step, the junior high school students couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. She was spirited and handsome, making people worship her. "Do you have a camera? I want to take a picture with her." "I didn't bring any. Didn't they say we can't bring cameras? I wanted to bring it, but I put it down when I went out. What a pity. If only I brought a camera." Suddenly, the sound of an argument broke the students' lamentations. They all turned their heads to look. It turned out that the people from Sun Ying's training class were criticizing her. How could Sun Ying have the strength to fight back? She angrily shouted, "You are all stupid. What does it have to do with me? You listen to whatever I say. If I tell you to drink urine, will you drink it too? Ugly people are always up to mischief, and in the end, they're blaming it on me. Get out of my way. Don't mess with me. After saying that, she pushed one of the thin and weak girls. She was easy to bully, so she pushed herself away and went down the stairs angrily. The girls behind her were not willing to give up, especially the girl who was obviously pushed down. She took off her shoes and threw them at Sun Ying angrily. The distance was close and the target was big. The leather shoe hit Sun Ying's back. This time she poked a hornet's nest. After being in prison for a few months, Sun Ying's personality became colder and sharper than before. If there was something wrong, she would feel that the other party was deliberately making things difficult for her. She turned her head and saw that it was a leather shoe that hit her. Without saying anything, she picked it up and threw it at her. Under the sunlight, her beautiful face was gloomy and cold. Her eyes were even colder when she looked at people. Even the air around her was filled with coldness. Sun Ying's current state caused others to feel a chill from the bottom of their feet. They couldn't help but shudder. Chapter 2499. However, those girls were the only daughters in the city. They had been holding back for a long time, so they surrounded Sun Ying and started fighting in front of the courthouse. In a black car parked across the street from the courthouse, Li Chuhai told Mrs. Li what he saw. Life isn't good. She got beaten up as soon as she left the house. Then let them beat her up first. Just don't let them get into the courthouse. Keep an eye on her. I still need her. I can't let her get away so easily. Mrs. Li said calmly and hung up the phone. She was doing skincare with Mrs. Qin, so it wasn't convenient for her to talk about this. Li Chuhai put away his phone and sat in the car with the engine running. He waited for the girls to finish fighting. The bailiff at the courthouse heard the commotion and immediately rushed down. He pulled them apart and yelled, "Fighting in front of the courthouse. Do you want to be sent to the police station for a few days? Stop it. You guys leave immediately." He told the girls who were in the training class with Yi Ying to leave first. They had no choice. Sun Ying had been locked up for a long time, so her body was weak. Naturally, she was beaten up badly. She was kicked a few times and even her face was scratched. His clothes were torn apart, and his sleeves were torn apart. When she came in, it was still cold in spring. Now it was May and the weather was getting warmer. Sun Ying was wearing a thermal jacket and a pair of jeans. The sleeves of the thermal jacket were ripped open, revealing her thin shoulders. Sun Ying had indeed lost a lot of weight after being locked up for a few months. The girls were still afraid of the bailiff. They glared at Sun Ying, who was holding her stomach, and left angrily. The commotion was so loud that it was hard for Yi Qian to ignore it. After greeting the villagers, she walked towards her classmates. However, as soon as she walked over, Sun Ying, who was holding her stomach and slowly walking down the stairs, suddenly stopped. She realized that she was in a sorry state. She endured the pain and stood up straight. She looked at Yi Qian with a gloomy gaze. "Yi Qian, I will make you pay for today's humiliation. Just you wait. I will make you pay for this." Sun Ying blamed all of today's humiliation on Yi Qian. Without waiting for Yi Qian to speak, all the students began to condemn her. "Sun Ying, you're really disgusting. You've done so many disgusting things, yet you still want to turn around and make things difficult for Yi Qian. How can there be someone like you? The most vicious woman's heart is you. That was too ruthless. You're trying to frame Yi Qian, yet you're still pretending to be innocent. You're so fucking disgusting." The boy couldn't take it anymore and said a few nasty words. This kind of person shouldn't have been released. "Yi Qian, look, we already said that she wouldn't change no matter what. You've forgiven her, but she still resents you and thinks that she's not in the wrong." Since they weren't in the courthouse, they didn't have much scruples when speaking. Listening to everyone's condemnation, Sun Ying, who was furious, glared at her former classmates fiercely. "What do you know? She was the one who took everything from me. It was this bastard who caused me to lose everything. All of you shut up. This is between me and Yi Qian. What does it have to do with you?" "Ha, it really does have something to do with us. Now all of us know your ugly face. You've succeeded in making all of us hate you. Sun Ying, don't come to any class gatherings in the future. We feel ashamed to have a classmate like you. You're so pretentious. There's no truth in your words at all. I really don't know where you get your sense of superiority from. You've been in prison and so have your parents. A family of 3 wearing prison uniforms in court. Your sense of superiority is really laughable. Chapter 2500. Ha, that's not a sense of superiority. It's just that she doesn't have the confidence and has no choice but to lie to herself and pretend that she's noble. Alright, what's the point of saying so much to a disgusting person? It's just a waste of your saliva. Let's not talk about it anymore. I'll go online later and tell everyone about what happened today in the group chat. I'll let everyone in the class know. That's not a bad idea. Don't we have an alumni group? You can say that. Tell the truth, there can't be a single lie in it. Otherwise, you'll become a certain someone. More and more people knew about her. This was what Sun Ying was most afraid of. Just a second ago, she was still trying her best to straighten her back, but now her entire body was trembling. In an instant, all the confidence in her heart seemed to have been exposed to light and turned into bubbles. With a soft sound, it disappeared into thin air. Her confidence was gone. Only a deep embarrassment. Her face was burning with pain. The fire in her heart was burning even more fiercely, to the point that the veins in her eyes appeared, and the bottom of her eyes were red. Just you wait, Yiqian. Don't get too cocky. She didn't dare to stay any longer. She gritted her teeth and turned the last of her foam-like confidence into a single sentence. After she finished speaking, she immediately rushed downstairs. Sun Ying, the days of neither living nor dying are beckoning to you. Also, take good care of the jade pendant, don't lose it. As she ran, she vaguely heard Yi Jian's voice drifting over. A huge wave of fear surged in from all directions like a tidal wave. Sun Ying's foot suddenly twisted, and in the end, she limped away. Go! Don't be an eyesore in front of us. Get lost, Sun Ying. Get as far away as you can. Seeing Sun Ying's fleeing figure, the eyes of her former classmates were filled with deep disgust. They were no longer afraid of what Sun Ying would do. Who would want to talk to someone with a completely ruined reputation? They couldn't wait to hide from someone like this, let alone talk about friendship with her. She had evil intentions and a vicious heart. No one dared to make friends with her, and even if they did, they would have to constantly worry about whether or not they would be killed by her. They did not have the mental fortitude of Yiqian, who was able to calmly face Sun Ying's schemes time and time again. Yiqian looked coldly at Sun Ying's back as she left. The students behind her looked at her, and then at Sun Ying, who was leaving in a sorry state. They all held their breaths. One ran away like a stray dog. One of them was dressed in a military uniform and had a pleasant expression on his face. One was dressed in gray, while the other was dressed in military green. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. The two of them had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. One was in the sky, the other was on the ground. There was no comparison. Li Chuhai watched patiently. Seeing that Sun Ying had finally escaped from the encirclement, he pursed his lips and continued to wait. Sun Ying did not dare to take a taxi at the entrance of the courthouse. The sharp voices behind her were like knives scraping her face, causing her to feel pain. It was like a mountain pressing down on her, making it difficult for her to even breathe. She walked down the stone steps until she was out of sight of her classmates. She waved for a taxi at the intersection ahead. Soon, a taxi stopped and picked up Sun Ying. A black car turned around from the opposite side of the road and followed Sun Ying's taxi as it passed by the courthouse. At that moment, Yiqian, who was laughing and chatting with his old classmates, suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the road. Just a moment ago, she felt a gaze sweep past her at an extremely fast speed. Even through the car window, she could feel the coldness and chill.